History is a story we are still learning to read. This video explores 35 archaeological anomalies that science is just beginning to understand. By the end, you will see the ancient world not as a static timeline, but as a living puzzle filled with brilliant, baffling secrets. How could a 2,000-year-old device predict eclipses? And why would a culture carve perfect stone spheres weighing tons? We will uncover the latest research on finds that rewrite our textbooks. What does it mean when the physical evidence contradicts everything we thought we knew about our ancestors? Archaeology thrives on finding patterns, weaving the scattered fragments of the past into a coherent story. Yet the most captivating moments in this field often arrive when those patterns shatter. A single artifact, unearthed in a remote desert or detected beneath a familiar cityscape, can stand in stark defiance of everything we thought we knew. These are the anomalies, the stubborn outliers that refuse to fit neatly into our historical timelines. They emerge not from a lack of evidence, but from evidence that seems to point in impossible directions. Today, with tools like ground-penetrating radar mapping buried cities without moving a single stone, and isotopic analysis tracing the lifetime journeys of an individual from their bones, we are finding more of these puzzles than ever before. The significance of an anomaly lies not in its mystery alone, but in what that mystery forces us to do. It begins with a collective pause, a moment of genuine confusion among experts. Then comes the slow, meticulous work of science, building hypotheses from the rubble of old assumptions. This process, often invisible to the public, is where our understanding of humanity truly evolves. What we are about to explore are 35 specific points where the map of history has a blank spot, and where the latest research is only now beginning to sketch in the first tentative lines. These catalysts for inquiry come in many forms. An anomaly could be a humble shard of pottery found 1,000 miles from where its unique clay was fired, telling a silent story of trade routes that stretched farther than any written record. It might be the precise alignment of a massive stone doorway, not with the rising sun of the equinox, but with a star that only returns to that exact position once every 26,000 years. Or it could be the subtle evidence of a surgical procedure, like trepanation, performed with remarkable skill in a community believed to have only basic medical knowledge. What defines each case is not just its strangeness, but its stubborn refusal to fit the narrative we have carefully constructed. When archaeologists uncover such an object, their first task is not to proclaim a mystery, but to eliminate all ordinary explanations. Could it have been moved by later activity or misstated by an error in the lab? Often, the anomaly holds firm. This is the moment it transforms from a curious find into a genuine key. It forces a fundamental question: is our timeline wrong, or is our understanding of the people who lived within it hopelessly incomplete? These outliers push science to invent new ways of seeing. The development of techniques like residue analysis, which can detect ancient molecules of chocolate or wine on a vessel, or LIDAR, which can map an entire jungle city from the air, were driven by the need to solve such puzzles. Each anomaly, therefore, is a gift. It is a provocation from the past, a deliberate nudge against the walls of our assumptions. They remind us that the historical record we study is not the full story of human ambition and ingenuity, but merely the fraction that happened to survive, waiting for the right question to bring it back to light. The power of these questions is matched only by the tools we now have to answer them. Where an archaeologist of a century ago might have relied on careful digging and educated intuition, today's researcher has a digital toolkit that feels almost like a form of time travel. Radiocarbon dating, for instance, has evolved from a broad estimate to a precise clock, allowing us to pinpoint the year a piece of charcoal was last alive or a grain was harvested. We can now extract ancient DNA from soil samples, identifying which species of plants and animals were present in a landscape long before any visible trace remains. Perhaps most astonishing is the use of particle physics, where scientists employ subatomic particles called muons, which rain down from the atmosphere to see through hundreds of feet of solid stone, revealing hidden chambers within pyramids or the internal structure of volcanoes. This technological leap transforms our relationship with the past. An object that was once just a curious artifact can now become a biography. By analyzing the isotopes locked within a single tooth, scientists can chart the geographical journey of a person's childhood, tracing the water they drank from region to region. Laser scanning creates perfect three-dimensional models of a crumbling inscription, allowing linguists to study it from every angle indefinitely, revealing worn markings invisible to the naked eye. These are not just improvements, they are entirely new senses through which we can perceive history. Because of this, cases once closed are being reopened. A stone slab dismissed as a natural oddity might, under spectral imaging, reveal faint tool marks arranged in a deliberate pattern. A legend about a sunken city, long considered folklore, can be surveyed with side-scan sonar, mapping its drowned streets from the surface. The process is inherently collaborative and painstakingly slow. A single artifact might pass from a field archaeologist to a materials chemist, to a geneticist to a climate historian, each expert adding a layer of understanding. It is a meticulous assembly of truth where the story emerges not from a single eureka moment, but from the gradual convergence of data from a dozen different fields. This scientific humility is key. The goal is not to force the evidence to fit a pre-written narrative, but to let the evidence, in all its complex and contradictory detail, write a new one. The first item on our list emerged not from a dig site, but from the silent depths of the sea. In the year 1900, sponge divers working near the island of Antikythera, Greece, stumbled upon the wreck of a Roman-era cargo ship. Among the statues and ceramics, they recovered a lump of corroded bronze and wood, so encrusted and decayed it seemed like little more than junk. It would take over half a century for anyone to realize they had found one of the most astonishing mechanical artifacts in human history. This object, now known as the Antikythera mechanism, sat in a museum drawer for decades, its true nature hidden beneath the grime of 2 millennia. When scientists finally began to clean it, they saw hints of precision gearwork, delicate inscriptions in ancient Greek, and a complexity that made no sense for its time. Here was a device built around the 2nd century before the Common Era, a period we associate with philosophy and simple mechanics, yet it contained a miniature cosmos of interlocking bronze gears. The initial reaction was disbelief. It seemed to be a clockwork calendar of the heavens, a machine for modeling the motions of the sun, the moon, and the planets. But such technology was not supposed to exist for another 1,000 years. For a long time, it was an isolated puzzle, a ghost in the machine of history that experts could not fully explain. The breakthrough came with modern imaging technology. Researchers used high-resolution X-rays and surface scanning to peer inside the calcified blocks without damaging them. What they saw was breathtaking. The scans revealed a sophisticated differential gear, a component previously believed to have been invented in the 16th century. They mapped intricate dials on the front and back, each serving a specific purpose. One dial tracked the 4-year cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. Another predicted solar and lunar eclipses with remarkable accuracy. Tiny inscriptions, essentially a user manual etched in bronze, explained how to operate the device to see the positions of celestial bodies on any given date. This was not a toy or a simple ornament. It was a precision-engineered calculator, a portable planetarium that could simulate the irregular dance of the moon and even account for celestial events like the Saros cycle, an 18-year pattern of eclipses. The existence of the Antikythera mechanism forces a dramatic shift in our understanding. It tells us that in the workshops of the Hellenistic world, likely in a center of learning like Rhodes or Alexandria, artisans and astronomers collaborated to create devices of profound intellectual ambition. This level of mechanical sophistication implies a lost lineage of engineering, a tradition of geared technology that was later forgotten, only to be reinvented centuries later. The mechanism stands as a powerful testament to a road not taken, a glimpse into an alternate path of technological development that flourished in antiquity and then vanished beneath the waves, waiting for a future age to rediscover its genius. While the Antikythera mechanism reveals a forgotten science, another artifact conceals its purpose behind an impenetrable veil of symbols. Housed in Yale University's rare book library is a volume that has become the holy grail of cryptographers, a book that looks like a medieval herbal or alchemical text but reads like nothing on Earth. This is the Voynich Manuscript, a codex of about 240 vellum pages, created in Europe during the early 15th century. From its first page to its last, it is written entirely in a unique script, an alphabet of elegant, looping characters that correspond to no known language. The text flows from left to right, with clear word breaks and a structure that suggests genuine linguistic patterns, yet its meaning has evaporated into history. The mystery is compounded by its lavish and perplexing illustrations. The pages are filled with paintings of plants that do not exist, their roots and leaves twisting in impossible configurations. There are intricate astrological diagrams featuring unfamiliar constellations and zodiac symbols. Most famously, there are sections depicting numerous female figures, unclothed, bathing in or interacting with a network of interconnected green pools and elaborate plumbing, a scene that has fueled endless speculation about its ritual or scientific purpose. For over a century, the world's top codebreakers, including teams from the Central Intelligence Agency and National Security Agency who tackled Nazi ciphers during the Second World War, have turned their skills to the Voynich. They have subjected its text to every form of statistical analysis available. They have measured word frequency, letter distribution, and syntactic patterns. The consistent result is both frustrating and fascinating. The manuscript demonstrates statistical properties very similar to a natural language, with clear patterns that rule out it being a random forgery or a simple letter substitution cipher. Yet it does not match the profile of any known European or Asian language from that period, living or dead. This has led to a forest of competing theories. Some researchers propose it is an encoded version of a known language, a cipher so clever it has yet to be cracked. Others suggest it represents a constructed language, an early attempt to create a universal tongue or a secret code for a closed community. Another prominent idea is that it is a meticulously crafted nonsense text, an artistic or philosophical experiment designed to mimic the appearance of knowledge without the substance, a medieval concept known as an artificial language. However, the detailed and consistent nature of the illustrations argues against pure gibberish. The most compelling recent analyses, using artificial intelligence and advanced linguistic models, have tentatively pointed toward it being based on a Semitic language family, like Hebrew or Arabic, but with an encoding system that scrambles the words. Even this promising lead has not yielded a readable translation. The Voynich manuscript's enduring power lies in its silent defiance. In an age where we can decode ancient genomes and peer inside pyramids, this book held in our hands remains a locked door. It is a tangible reminder that the past can choose to keep a secret, that not every artifact is willing to surrender its story. It challenges our assumption that with enough data, every mystery will yield. This book, with its unknowable plants and unreadable text, stands as a monument to the limits of our understanding, a beautiful, frustrating whisper from a world we thought we could reconstruct, proving that some conversations with history remain one-sided. A perfect sphere of stone is a declaration of intent. Deep in the humid lowlands of Costa Rica's Diquis Delta, hundreds of these silent declarations lie scattered, some half-buried in riverbanks, others standing sentinel in village squares. Ranging from the size of a bowling ball to colossal orbs over 2 meters in diameter and weighing up to 16 tons, these nearly perfect spheres were crafted by a pre-Columbian culture between the years 300 and 1500 of the Common Era. Their existence poses a dual puzzle of purpose and process, a testament to a society that invested immense effort into creating objects of stunning geometrical purity, yet left no written record explaining why. How does a culture without metal tools, powered wheels, or even the draft animal transform raw blocks of hard granite and gabbro into such flawless forms, and then transport them across miles of swampy, uneven jungle? The first modern encounter with the spheres came in the 1930s as the United Fruit Company cleared land for banana plantations. Workers hacking through the dense undergrowth would uncover these smooth stones, often assuming they were natural oddities or contained hidden gold. This led to unfortunate damage as some were dynamited or rolled aside, their true significance unrecognized. It was only through systematic archaeological work that their human origin and profound age became clear. The fabrication process itself is a marvel of persistent skill. Researchers believe the sculptors likely identified naturally rounded boulders in riverbeds as starting points. Using other, harder stones as hammers, they would have painstakingly pecked away at the surface, rotating the sphere incrementally to maintain symmetry. The final smoothing was achieved with abrasives like sand, possibly using water and leather to polish the stone to a high sheen over generations of work. This was not a quick task, but a communal project spanning decades, perhaps even centuries for the largest examples. The greater mystery is what they were for. Early speculation ranged from astronomical tools to navigational aids, but recent archaeology offers a more grounded, yet equally fascinating theory. The spheres are rarely found alone. They often appear in groups, arranged in lines, triangles, or parabolic curves near the remains of chiefdom residences and ceremonial spaces. This placement suggests they functioned as powerful markers of social and political identity. A leader with the authority to commission and position multiple colossal spheres was demonstrating control over both labor and landscape, turning the earth itself into a statement of power and permanence. Their perfect shape may have held cosmological significance, representing celestial bodies like the sun or moon, or concepts of wholeness and balance. The true cultural meaning, however, remains just out of reach, eroded by time and the disruption of the Spanish conquest. Today, researchers use three-dimensional scanning to analyze every imperfection on the sphere's surfaces, mapping tool marks to understand the exact techniques used. They study the geological sources of the stone to trace ancient transportation routes, revealing a sophisticated knowledge of the local terrain. Each sphere is a frozen moment of ancient ambition, a physical equation where immense weight meets perfect form. They ask us not to underestimate the engineering prowess of so-called simple societies, and to consider that some of humanity's most profound statements are made not with words, but with shape, weight, and silent, enduring geometry. The silence of a desert can hold a shout. Across a vast, arid plateau in southern Peru, the earth itself has been given a voice through the removal of its surface stones. Here, the Nazca people, between 500 years before the Common Era and 500 years after, created one of humanity's most staggering artistic statements, the Nazca lines. These are not mere drawings, but geoglyphs, immense designs made by carefully clearing the dark, sun-baked gravel to reveal the lighter-colored soil beneath. They stretch across nearly 1,000 square kilometers, depicting a menagerie of creatures, a hummingbird with wings outstretched, a spider, a monkey with a spiraled tail, and geometric forms so vast their true shape can only be comprehended from the sky. This very fact, their invisibility from the ground, has fueled a century of speculation ranging from the plausible to the fantastical. Were they landing strips for ancient astronauts or a colossal astronomical calendar? For decades, the mystery seemed locked in this binary between extraterrestrial intervention and a purely functional scientific purpose. But the latest scientific investigations are moving beyond these old debates, using technology to listen to what the lines themselves and the landscape they inhabit have been whispering all along. Modern archaeologists no longer just look at the pictures, they study the ground from which they were made. Using soil analysis and microscopic examination of the cleared pathways, researchers have discovered something remarkable. The process of removing the stones and exposing the underlying earth created a compacted layer that acts as a moisture trap. In a desert where rain might fall only for an hour each year, these lines were not passive drawings, they were active components of the environment. This discovery pivots the entire discussion. Drones and satellite mapping now allow for unprecedented analysis of the line's placement in relation to the terrain. They are not random, but are intricately connected to the flow of water through the desert, often leading from the foothills of the Andes toward ancient settlement sites and sources of precious water. This has led to a compelling and deeply human theory. The lines were likely part of a vast ritual landscape, a sacred geography designed to communicate with deities believed to control the most vital resource of all, water. The act of walking these pathways in ceremonial processions may have been a form of prayer, a physical invocation for fertility and life in an unforgiving landscape. The giant spider, for instance, could be linked to rain, as spiders were seen as harbingers of precipitation in some Andean beliefs. The hummingbird, a pollinator, might symbolize regeneration. Viewed from above, the plateau transforms from a collection of puzzling images into a monumental prayer book written upon the earth, each glyph a chapter in a desperate, hopeful dialogue with the forces of nature. This interpretation does not diminish their awe, it deepens it. It reveals a culture that did not separate art from science or ritual from survival. They engineered their environment on a colossal scale to express their most profound hopes and fears, turning the entire desert into a cathedral without walls. The lines were not meant for our eyes or for visitors from the stars, but for the eyes of the gods, a permanent, unwavering petition etched into the very skin of the world, a testament to the human need to find meaning and exert influence in a vast and unpredictable universe. A small electric current can rewrite an entire chapter of history. In the basement of the National Museum of Iraq in Baghdad rests an unassuming clay jar about the size of a man's fist. Found in the 1930s at a site near the city, this artifact from the Parthian or Sassanid era, roughly 2,000 years ago, consists of three simple components. A terracotta pot, a copper cylinder carefully soldered with a lead and tin alloy, and an iron rod suspended inside the cylinder. To a modern eye, the assembly is eerily familiar. If you were to fill the jar with an acidic electrolyte, something as common as vinegar or grape juice, a chemical reaction occurs. The acidic liquid interacts with the two different metals, the copper and the iron, generating a small but measurable voltage between them. In essence, this object functions as a primitive battery capable of producing around 1 volt of electricity. The implications of this are staggering. It suggests the possibility that a form of electrochemistry was understood and potentially utilized centuries, even a millennium, before the official birth of the battery in the laboratories of Europe. The immediate question is not just what it is, but what it was for. The scholarly debate is a fascinating split between practical application and profound experience. One compelling theory is electroplating. A goldsmith could have used a series of these cells to apply a thin layer of gold or silver onto another metal object, a process that leaves a distinctive finish difficult to achieve by other means. While no electroplated artifacts from that period have been conclusively linked to such a method, the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, especially for delicate surface treatments that could erode over time. Another, more speculative idea points toward the realm of ritual and sensation. A priest or healer holding two terminals connected to such a cell might have used the mild electric tingle as a tangible manifestation of divine power, a physical shock to accompany a spiritual revelation. This bridges technology and belief, turning a chemical reaction into a tool for transcendence. Skeptics, however, offer a much more mundane explanation. They propose the jar was simply a secure storage vessel for precious scrolls, with the iron rod acting as a core around which parchment could be rolled, and the copper cylinder serving as a protective case. The bitumen used to seal the top would have kept out moisture and pests. In this view, the electrical property is merely a coincidental side effect of the materials chosen for a purely mechanical purpose. This is where experimental archaeology steps in. Modern researchers have built precise replicas of the Baghdad battery, testing them with various ancient electrolytes. They have confirmed that yes, it works. It can power a small light bulb or create a perceptible shock, but proving it was used for that purpose is a different challenge entirely. The artifact sits at a tantalizing crossroads. It is either a brilliant, isolated spark of technological insight that flickered and was lost, a what if that never became a what next, or it is a clever storage container that we have profoundly misread. This duality is its true power. It forces us to confront the gaps in our knowledge. How many other objects in museums, labeled as simple pots or odd tools, might conceal a forgotten function? The Baghdad battery, whether an ancient power source or a humble jar, electrifies our imagination. It reminds us that innovation is not always a linear march forward, but sometimes a solitary idea, born in a workshop 2 millennia ago, waiting in the dark for a future age to recognize its potential. A map drawn on gazelle skin holds a coastline that should not exist. In the year 1513, Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis compiled a world map, of which only a fragment survives today. This surviving piece, discovered in the Topkapi Palace Library in 1929, is a breathtaking work of art and intellect. It shows the Atlantic Ocean with the western coasts of Africa and Europe and the eastern shores of South America with startling clarity. But it is the southernmost landmass that ignites the fiercest debate, a territory sketched beyond the tip of South America that bears a haunting, controversial resemblance to the coastline of Antarctica, a continent not officially discovered for another 300 years. The map itself is not shy about its origins. In his own marginal notes, Piri Reis states he used about 20 source charts, including several he describes as dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. This claim is the heart of the anomaly, suggesting that his work was not pure invention, but a synthesis of far older, lost geographical knowledge. Could ancient mariners have possessed charts of lands that would remain hidden to the rest of the world for millennia? Modern cartographic analysis has both deepened the mystery and offered sobering corrections. When researchers overlay the Piri Reis map with modern projections, the fit for South America, particularly Brazil, is remarkably good for its time. The depiction of rivers and capes aligns in ways that suggest genuine, first-hand navigational data, likely from Portuguese explorations. The Antarctic question, however, is where science diverges. The controversial southern land is not depicted under miles of ice, but as a connected extension of the continent, with mountains and rivers. Critics argue this is more likely a speculative interpretation of a rumored southern land, or even a distorted version of the Patagonian coast, stretched and bent to fit the parchment. They point out that the map lacks the precise longitudinal data needed to confirm it as a true survey of Antarctica's unique, ice-free coastline. Yet, the alignment of certain features with subglacial topography, revealed only by modern seismic surveys, continues to intrigue some researchers. It presents a tantalizing possibility that the map preserves a ghost image, a memory of a time when Antarctic coasts were ice-free and potentially navigable thousands of years before Piri Reis put ink to skin. Whether it records a lost epoch or a brilliant guess, the map's true power lies in its testament to the fluid, interconnected nature of knowledge before the age of print. It represents a moment where medieval Islamic cartography, European exploratory data, and whispers of ancient Alexandrian geography collided in a single document. It forces us to consider how much knowledge is truly lost, not in libraries, but in the oral traditions of sailors and the perishable charts carried on voyages that never returned. The Piri Reis map is less a puzzle to be solved than a window into a world where the edges of the map were not just blank spaces, but filled with the fading echoes of older, bolder worlds. A single shovel strike can reveal a world that was never meant to be seen. In the Chinese province of Zhejiang, in the year 1992, a local farmer decided to pump water out of a small, seemingly bottomless pond in his village. As the water level dropped over 17 straight days, it revealed not a natural pool, but the entrance to an immense hand-carved cavern. This was the first glimpse of the Longyou caves, a network of at least 24 subterranean halls, each one a staggering monument to human labor and geometric precision. Stepping inside is like entering the belly of a stone giant. The ceilings soar over 30 meters high, supported by massive, evenly spaced pillars that appear to have been left standing as the surrounding rock was painstakingly chiseled away. The walls and ceilings are not rough-hewn, but covered from floor to ceiling in a mesmerizing, uniform pattern of parallel chisel marks, each line about the width of a finger, running at a consistent 60-degree angle. This decorative, rhythmic texture transforms the space from a simple quarry into what feels like a grand, buried ceremonial hall. The sheer scale of the undertaking is almost incomprehensible. Archaeologists estimate that to create these caverns, ancient workers would have had to remove nearly 1 million cubic meters of solid sandstone. That is a volume of stone equivalent to building 2 of the Great Pyramids of Giza. But here, the work was subtractive, carving inward from the earth rather than building upward. This was accomplished over 2,000 years ago, in an era before mechanized tools, using nothing more than hammers, chisels, and an unimaginable reserve of coordinated effort. Yet, in all the vast archives of Chinese history, there is not a single written record, imperial decree, or local legend that mentions the construction of these caves. They are a historical ghost, a project of epic proportions that somehow vanished from collective memory. This silence fuels the central mystery. What were they for? The most practical theory suggests they were simply a quarry, providing the distinctive red sandstone for buildings in the region. However, the meticulous, decorative finishing on every surface seems excessively artistic for a mere mining operation. Why invest such care in a space meant to be abandoned and collapse? Other theories point toward a grand imperial tomb complex or a hidden ritual space, perhaps for a secretive sect. The precise angles and echoing acoustics of the halls do create an atmosphere of solemn grandeur. Yet no artifacts, inscriptions, or any evidence of human occupation have ever been found inside, not a single pottery shard or tool left behind. It is as if the workers finished their monumental task, walked out, and erased all knowledge of it. Modern science is now probing this silent enigma. Geologists map the stress patterns in the pillars to understand the engineering principles that have kept the caves standing for millennia. Archaeologists use 3-dimensional laser scanning to analyze the tool marks with microscopic precision, hoping the angle and depth might reveal the specific techniques and even the sequence of work crews. Each scan, each soil sample, is a question posed to the empty halls. the Longyou caves stand as a profound lesson in humility. They remind us that history is not only written in texts but excavated in silence. A society capable of such a coordinated, hidden masterpiece clearly possessed sophisticated organizational skills and a powerful motivating purpose, one that we have yet to decipher. The caves are not just a hole in the ground, they are a hole in our understanding, a vast, beautiful question carved in stone, waiting in the dark for an answer. The silence of a carved cavern gives way to the thunderous geometry of a mountaintop fortress. High above the ancient Inca capital of Cusco, Peru, the stone walls of Sacsayhuamán rise from the earth like the teeth of a giant stone serpent. This is not a structure built, but one seemingly grown from the bedrock itself, composed of limestone blocks so colossal they defy belief, with some individual stones estimated to weigh more than 100 tons. The Inca civilization is historically credited with constructing this formidable complex in the 15th century, yet the sheer physical reality of the site presents a puzzle that has humbled engineers for centuries. The stones are not merely stacked, they are woven together in a three-dimensional jigsaw of staggering complexity. Each multi-angled block is uniquely shaped to interlock perfectly with its neighbors on all sides, fitted with such hairline precision that, as the famous saying goes, not even a razor blade can be inserted into the seam. No mortar was used and none was needed. The fit is its own adhesive, a testament to a stoneworking technique so advanced it appears to border on alchemy. How did a culture without iron tools, without the wheel, and without draft animals achieve this feat of megalithic engineering? For generations, the dominant explanation focused on the power of a highly organized labor force. The Inca were master administrators, capable of mobilizing thousands of workers through a system of communal labor. The conventional story described teams of men using stone hammers to pound the blocks into shape, dragging them on rollers up steep inclines with ropes made of grass, and then patiently sanding the edges for a perfect fit through trial and error over many years. While this explains the social organization, it struggles to account for the microscopic precision of the joins, especially on the inward and backward-facing surfaces the workers could not see or easily access once the stone was set. Recent research is moving beyond the traditional narrative, employing laser scanning and three-dimensional structural analysis to interrogate the stones themselves. These digital tools map every imperfection, every subtle curve and angle with sub-millimeter accuracy. What they reveal is a methodology far more sophisticated than simple pounding. The scans suggest the masons may have employed a technique of indirect percussion, using precisely placed hammer strikes on smaller stones to transfer force and shape the larger block with controlled fractures, almost like a form of stone acupuncture. Another compelling theory involves the use of templates or guide models. Craftsmen might have first shaped a smaller master block from a soft material like clay or wood, capturing the complex negative space required. This template could then be used to guide the shaping of the actual limestone, perhaps by holding it against the stone and marking transfer points, a process requiring immense spatial reasoning. The transportation mystery is also being re-examined. Some researchers propose the use of a clever pivot and lever system, where the giant stones were not dragged flat, but were carefully rocked and walked forward in a controlled, incremental shuffle, a method still used in some traditional cultures today. This would explain how they navigated the rugged terrain without leaving deep, permanent rut marks. Each of these theories points toward a deep, specialized knowledge, a school of engineering that was likely passed down through generations of master artisans. The walls of Sacsayhuamán, therefore, are more than a fortress. They are a physical library of applied physics and geometry. They challenge our perception of Inca technology, not as primitive, but as brilliantly adapted to their materials and environment. The stones do not simply sit together. They hold a conversation, each block supporting its neighbor in a mutual embrace that has withstood centuries of earthquakes. This was not just construction, it was a profound philosophical statement in stone, a belief in harmony, balance, and the transformation of a chaotic mountain into a sacred, ordered space that mirrored the cosmos itself. The seamless stonework of the Inca gives way to a much older, more foundational mystery, one that reaches back to the very dawn of human society. In the arid, rolling hills of southeastern Turkey, a simple hilltop known as Göbekli Tepe was long dismissed by archaeologists as nothing more than a medieval cemetery. That assumption collapsed in the 1990s when German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt began to dig. What he uncovered did not just rewrite a local history, it shattered the global narrative of how civilization began. Here, carved directly from the living bedrock around 9,600 years before the Common Era, are dozens of massive T-shaped limestone pillars, each weighing many tons, arranged in a series of distinct stone circles. They predate Stonehenge by a staggering 6,000 years, and they stand as a direct challenge to one of archaeology's core doctrines, the Neolithic Revolution. For over a century, the story was elegantly simple. The theory held that first, humans learned to farm. Agriculture created surplus food, which allowed people to settle down in permanent villages. This settled life, with its newfound stability and social complexity, then provided the leisure and organizational capacity to develop religion, art, and monumental architecture. Göbekli Tepe turns this sequence completely on its head. This site is not a village. There is no evidence of permanent domestic settlement, no houses, no grain silos, no fields. Instead, it appears to have been a purely ritual center, a sacred meeting place built by hunter-gatherers. The implication is profound. Complex symbolic thought and large-scale social cooperation did not emerge from farming. They may have been the very catalyst that made farming possible. The pillars themselves are a gallery of ancient ore. They are not blank monoliths, but canvases carved with an astonishing menagerie of animals, foxes, scorpions, lions, birds, and snakes, rendered with a vitality and precision that speaks of a deep, spiritual relationship with the wild world. These are not the docile sheep and goats of a domesticated landscape, but the powerful, dangerous creatures of a hunter's universe. The T-shape is widely interpreted as stylized human figures, perhaps ancestors or deities watching over the gatherings. Building this required a staggering communal effort. Quarrying, shaping, transporting, and erecting these multi-ton pillars would have demanded the coordinated labor of hundreds of people, likely drawn from different hunter-gatherer bands across a wide region. They had to be fed, housed temporarily, and organized, all without a permanent agricultural base to support them. This suggests a level of social sophistication and shared belief previously thought impossible for pre-agrarian societies. Today, ongoing excavations and new scientific techniques are slowly piecing together the logistics of this prehistoric pilgrimage site. Analysis of microscopic wear on flint tools reveals the specific methods used to carve the limestone. Studies of the countless animal bones found at the site, primarily from wild gazelle and aurochs, are clarifying the scale of feasting that occurred here, indicating that people gathered seasonally for large ritual events centered around shared meals. Researchers are also examining the surrounding landscape for clues, searching for the smaller, temporary camps where the builders lived while working on the site. Each discovery adds a brushstroke to the picture of a highly mobile yet deeply connected society, united by a common vision powerful enough to move mountains of stone. Göbekli Tepe poses a fundamental question about human nature. What force is strong enough to bring scattered bands of hunter-gatherers together to perform such backbreaking, generation-spanning work? The answer seems to lie not in the practical needs of survival, but in the intangible realm of belief and community. It suggests that the human impulse to create meaning, to gather around shared symbols and stories, may be the original social glue, the foundational technology that allowed us to first imagine and then build the world we know. This hilltop is not a relic of early farming. It is the architectural birth certificate of a new idea, the idea that by coming together for something greater than subsistence, humanity could literally reshape the earth. The colossal stone faces of Rapa Nui gaze inland with an eternal, silent authority. These moai, the iconic statues of Easter Island, are far more than just heads. They are full bodies, some standing over 30 feet tall and weighing up to 80 tons, carved from compressed volcanic ash. For centuries, their most pressing question has been a logistical one. How did a society with no wheels, no metal, and no large animals move these giants from the central quarry at Rano-Raraku to ceremonial platforms called ahu, often miles away across rugged terrain? The classic answer involved log rollers and large teams slowly dragging them horizontally, a theory that always struggled to explain the island's limited timber resources. But a paradigm-shifting experiment offered a radical, elegant alternative. What if the statues walked? Researchers, collaborating with a local community, created a concrete replica of a mid-sized moai. Using 3 strong ropes, one team on each side to rock the statue forward and a third team at the back to steady it and prevent a runaway fall, they demonstrated that a small group could indeed walk a multi-ton figure upright in a controlled, swaying gait. This method, described in oral traditions, suddenly made profound practical sense. It requires far fewer people and no timber at all, just strong ropes and coordinated rhythm. The theory gained powerful physical evidence from the island's ancient roads themselves. Archaeologists mapping these paths found that they are not flat, but often have a V-shaped or convex profile, with scattered broken moai along the routes that appear to have fallen and been abandoned. This pattern is consistent with statues moving upright, where a loss of control would lead to a forward fall, rather than a lateral topple from a dragging method. The walking theory transforms our image of the process from a grueling, silent drag to a dynamic, almost ceremonial event, a rhythmic procession where the giant seemed to come to life, swaying across the landscape toward its ancestral home. Yet this solved mystery only deepens a greater one. The quarry at Rano-Raraku is a haunting landscape of frozen industry, with nearly 400 statues in various stages of completion. Some are still attached to the bedrock, while others stand partially excavated, as if the workers simply put down their tools and walked away. This reveals a staggering fact: more moai were left in the quarry than were ever successfully transported and erected. This points not to a gradual decline, but to a sudden, society-wide halt. What could cause such an abrupt cessation of a central cultural and spiritual practice? The answer is increasingly linked to the island's ecological history. Pollen analysis from lake sediments tells a story of dramatic change. When Polynesian settlers arrived around the year 1200, the island was covered in a lush palm forest. Over centuries, as the population grew and statue construction demanded resources for ropes, sledges, and to feed the labor force, deforestation accelerated. The loss of trees led to soil erosion, decreased crop yields, and the collapse of seabird populations, a key food source. The very societal drive that produced the moai may have inadvertently undermined the island's ability to support the large, coordinated populations needed to move and erect them. The unfinished giants in the quarry stand as a powerful, poignant monument to a tipping point. They represent a moment when environmental pressures and perhaps social conflict forced a profound cultural pivot. The later islanders, ancestors of today's Rapa Nui people, shifted their focus from carving and transporting new moai to the veneration of those already standing, and later to the birdman cult, a new ritual focus that required less material expenditure. The story of the moai, therefore, is not one of a mysterious collapse, but of remarkable adaptation. It shows a society that created one of the world's most stunning artistic traditions, confronted the unintended consequences of that creation, and found a new way to sustain their community and culture against formidable odds. The statues are not tombstones for a failed people, but testaments to human resilience, reminding us that the end of one chapter is often the beginning of another, written in the silent language of stone and survival. The resilience of the Rapa Nui people finds a stark contrast in the silent stone of an Egyptian temple wall. Deep within the crypts of the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, a bas-relief carving has sparked one of the most enduring modern debates about ancient technology. The scene shows two figures holding aloft a large, bulbous object, inside of which a snake extends along its length, its head touching the narrow end. This serpent is held by a standing god, and the entire assembly is connected by a cable-like line to a box supported by a pillar, which another figure seems to be operating. To a viewer from the age of electricity, the interpretation leaps out. It looks unmistakably like a giant, archaic light bulb, complete with a filament and a power source. This interpretation, often called the Dendera light, proposes that ancient Egyptians might have possessed some form of advanced electrical knowledge, a secret since lost. The emotional appeal is powerful. It suggests a hidden chapter of history where pharaohs illuminated their tombs not with flickering torches, but with the steady glow of artificial light. Mainstream Egyptology, however, offers a profoundly different reading, one rooted in the complex symbolic language of this ancient culture. Experts in Egyptian iconography point to the consistent motifs present. The bulbous object is not a glass enclosure, but a lotus flower, a potent symbol of creation and rebirth. The snake emerging from it is not a filament, but a representation of the primeval serpent god, Harsomptus, an embodiment of life force and divine power. The so-called cable is a stylized lotus stem, and the box is a jed pillar, a symbol of stability and the backbone of the god Osiris. The entire scene is a cosmological diagram, illustrating the moment of creation itself, where the lotus, rising from the watery chaos, gives birth to the sun god in the form of a serpent. This interpretation fits seamlessly within the temple's purpose as a house of worship, every carving a theological statement meant to be read by priests, not a technical blueprint for engineers. The scientific analysis here is less about chemistry or physics, and more about the rigorous study of comparative symbolism. Researchers methodically catalog thousands of similar reliefs, tracing the evolution of the lotus and serpent motif across 3,000 years of Egyptian art. They demonstrate that the elements in the Dendera relief appear in countless other ritual contexts, never in a functional workshop setting. The figures are gods and kings, not technicians. This case becomes a masterclass in the danger of pareidolia, the human tendency to see familiar patterns, especially modern ones, in ancient and abstract art. Our 21st century minds, saturated with the imagery of technology, can easily project a light bulb onto a lotus flower. The true lesson of Dendera is not about lost electricity, but about the importance of cultural context. It challenges us to set aside our own frame of reference and strive to see the world through the eyes of those who carved it. Their genius was not for inventing incandescent bulbs, but for encoding their deepest philosophical and spiritual ideas into a visual language of breathtaking consistency and durability. The temple wall was not meant to illuminate a dark room, but to illuminate the mysteries of the universe, a function it continues to perform, though not in the way some modern observers first imagined. A stone slab can be a library without words. In a farmer's field in West Dunbartonshire, Scotland, lies a 5,000-year-old mystery carved directly into the earth. The Cochno stone is a massive sandstone panel, roughly the size of two large dining tables, and its surface is a dense tapestry of ancient art. Across its face are more than 90 intricate motifs, a mesmerizing collection of concentric circles, some surrounded by radiating grooves, spirals that seem to spin into infinity, and curious cup-shaped depressions. These are the classic cup and ring marks found at Neolithic and Bronze Age sites across Britain and Ireland. But the Cochno stone is a masterpiece of the form, one of the most complex and well-preserved examples ever discovered. For most of the 20th century, this treasure lay hidden, reburied in the 1960s to protect it from vandalism and the wear of weather. It became a legend, a sleeping giant beneath the grass. That changed in 2016 when a team of archaeologists from the University of Glasgow, in collaboration with local heritage groups, undertook a full excavation. Their goal was not to move the stone but to see it with new eyes. For a few short weeks, the earth was peeled back, revealing the full extent of the carvings in startling clarity. The team then employed a non-invasive technological marvel. They used structured light scanners to capture the stone's surface in 3 dimensions. This process created a hyper-precise digital twin, a perfect virtual replica where every groove, every subtle undulation in the rock is recorded down to a fraction of a millimeter. This record is permanent and globally accessible, allowing researchers from any discipline to study the stone's grammar without ever setting foot on the site. The technology transforms the mystery. Before, theories about the stone's purpose were educated guesses based on sketches and photographs. Was it a celestial map with spirals charting the motion of stars or the sun? Could the patterns denote territorial boundaries or clan affiliations, a prehistoric deed to the land? Perhaps it was a focal point for rituals, where the act of tracing the circles with a finger or pouring liquid into the cups was a spiritual practice connecting the community to the earth and sky. The 3-dimensional model allows scientists to test these ideas in new ways. They can analyze the sequence of carving, discerning which marks were made first, potentially revealing a narrative in the stone's creation. They can simulate how sunlight and shadow would have moved across the grooves at different times of the year, searching for alignments with solstices or other astronomical events. The digital record also preserves a history of interaction, including modern graffiti from before its burial, which itself becomes part of the stone's long story. The Cochno stone's power lies in its eloquent silence. It is a message from a time before writing, a deliberate, labor-intensive investment of meaning into the very landscape. The people who carved it over generations left no written explanation, trusting the patterns themselves to hold their significance. Modern technology, rather than imposing an answer, gives us a better way to listen. It allows us to ask more nuanced questions of this ancient canvas, hoping that in the precise depth of a ring or the specific curve of a spiral, we might one day catch an echo of the first artist's intent. A shared human impulse to make a mark and say, "We were here." Beneath the waves, the line between geology and history blurs into a beautiful, unresolved question. Off the southern coast of Japan's Yonaguni Island, a diver in the 1980s encountered something that should not have been there, a sprawling, monumental structure resting on the seafloor. Known as the Yonaguni Monument, this formation rises from depths of around 80 feet, a colossal arrangement of massive stone blocks forming wide terraces, sharp-edged steps, and towering pillars. Its most striking features are the stark, flat plains and what appear to be perfectly straight channels and right angles, all carved with a geometric precision that feels deeply intentional to the human eye. At first glance, it resembles the sunken ruins of a ceremonial plaza or a fortress, a piece of a forgotten continent swallowed by the sea. This discovery immediately fractured scientific opinion into 2 compelling and fundamentally different interpretations of the same stone. On one side, geologists point to the powerful natural forces at play, The monument is composed of sandstone, a sedimentary rock that naturally fractures along flat plains. They argue that the strong tidal currents in the area, combined with seismic activity from the nearby Longyou Trench, have acted like a master sculptor over millennia, eroding the rock into these dramatic pseudo-architectural forms. The seemingly carved steps could be the result of layers of softer rock washing away, leaving behind harder ledges. The apparent faces and animal shapes might be classic examples of pareidolia, where our pattern-seeking brains impose familiar images onto random natural features. In this view, the monument is a spectacular work of natural art, a testament to the immense, slow power of water and tectonic movement. Yet, other researchers, including some marine archaeologists, counter with a list of anomalies that are hard to dismiss. They highlight features that seem to defy simple erosion, such as two round holes positioned close together on a vertical face, which resemble mooring holes for ropes. They point to a long, straight trench that runs for meters with parallel sides, a formation less common in natural sandstone weathering. The most controversial element is a large, flat slab nicknamed the Turtle, which rests atop the main platform and bears a striking resemblance to stylized animal sculptures found in other ancient cultures. If even one of these features is conclusively proven to be human-made, it would imply a radical rewrite of regional prehistory, suggesting a sophisticated culture capable of monumental stonework at a time when sea levels were dramatically lower, over 10,000 years ago. Modern marine science is the referee in this debate. Researchers now use high-resolution multi-beam sonar to create detailed three-dimensional maps of the entire formation, measuring every angle and plane with digital precision. Divers equipped with sensitive probes take samples from the stone surfaces, analyzing tool marks and weathering patterns under microscopes to distinguish between the chisel of a human hand and the relentless scrape of sand carried by currents. Each survey adds data, but the story remains tantalizingly incomplete. The Yonaguni monument, therefore, is more than a site, it is a philosophical challenge. It asks us how we define evidence when the usual clues, like pottery, tools, or charcoal from fires, may have been swept away by millennia of ocean storms. It lives in that captivating gray area where geology meets the ghost of possibility, a submerged riddle that reminds us our planet's most profound secrets may not be hidden in distant deserts or deep jungles, but lying in plain sight, waiting beneath the quiet, blue weight of the sea. The silent, patient geology of the seafloor finds a startling echo in the dry creek beds of Texas. Here, another object emerged from the stone, not as a sprawling monument, but as a small, personal artifact that seemed to defy the very timeline of our species. In the year 1936, a couple hiking along Red Creek near the town of London, Texas, noticed a curious piece of rock with a fragment of wood protruding from it. When they cracked the stone open, they discovered a hammerhead made of solid iron, still attached to its original, partially petrified wooden handle. The immediate shock came from its geological context. The hammer had been completely encased in a concretion of Cretaceous rock, a formation dating back over 100 million years to the age of the dinosaurs. The implication seemed preposterous, a clearly human-made tool, one that looked remarkably like a 19th-century blacksmith's hammer, was somehow sealed inside stone from an era before humans, or even primates, had evolved. This was the London hammer, an artifact that quickly became a favorite piece of evidence for those who believe in ancient advanced civilizations or catastrophic revisions of Earth's history. The emotional pull is undeniable. It presents a physical, tactile contradiction, a modern object in an ancient setting, begging for a rewrite of every textbook. Science, however, approaches such contradictions not with a rewrite, but with a careful, methodical audit of the evidence. The first and most critical examination focuses on the stone itself, not the hammer. Geologists specialize in understanding the stories rocks tell, and their analysis of the concretion provided a clear, alternative narrative. Concretions are not time capsules marking the age of objects inside them. They are fascinating geological formations that can occur relatively quickly in the right conditions. They form when mineral cement, often limestone or iron oxide, precipitates from groundwater and binds surrounding sediment into a hard, rounded mass. This process can encase anything in the vicinity, from a fossil shell to a piece of driftwood, or, as in this case, a lost hammer. The rate of formation is highly variable, depending on water chemistry and mineral content. A concretion could form in centuries or even decades, not necessarily over millions of years. The Cretaceous age rock around the hammer, therefore, does not date the hammer. It simply means the hammer was lost in a creek bed containing much older stones, and a younger concretion grew around it, locking it in a deceptive embrace. The second line of inquiry examines the object itself. Metallurgists and historians of technology have studied the hammer's design and composition. The iron shows a level of purity and forging technique consistent with American tools from the late 1800s. The style of the hammerhead, with its particular shape and the method of attaching the handle, matches common blacksmith work from that period, not some unknown, ancient metallurgical tradition. The wood of the handle, while partially mineralized, is consistent with local timber. When viewed through this lens, the story transforms from an impossible anomaly into a perfectly plausible, even mundane, historical scenario. A miner or farmer in the late 19th century loses his hammer in a creek. Over the following decades, mineral-rich waters slowly deposit layers of stone around it, cementing it into the surrounding gravel. Erosion eventually exposes the odd-shaped rock, which is found and cracked open a few decades later, revealing what appears to be an ancient relic. The London hammer stands as one of the most important cautionary tales in archaeology. Its true value is not as proof of a forgotten age, but as a masterclass in the principle of context. An artifact is meaningless without understanding the story of the soil that holds it. This case highlights the essential, painstaking work of distinguishing between a genuine historical mystery and a geological accident of circumstance. It reminds us that our desire to find the extraordinary must always be tempered by a rigorous respect for the ordinary, often slower, processes of the natural world. The hammer challenges us not to believe the impossible at first glance, but to look more carefully, to ask how the stone formed, and to let the quiet, meticulous voice of science separate human history from the deep time of the earth. A single silver coin can whisper of voyages spanning an ocean. In the soft earth of a shell midden at the Nazca Point site in Maine, archaeologists in the 1950s unearthed a small, worn silver disc. It was a Norse penny minted between 1067 and 1093 during the reign of King Olaf Kyrre of Norway. This artifact, known as the Maine penny, is utterly genuine, a tiny, physical piece of medieval Scandinavia. Yet its resting place, amidst the tools and refuse of a 12th-century Native American settlement, is a geographical paradox that has fueled decades of quiet debate. How did this coin cross the Atlantic, only to be lost over 1,000 miles south of the only confirmed Norse settlement in the Americas, at Elance Oaks Meadows in Newfoundland? The scientific analysis of the coin itself is definitive. Metallurgical studies confirm its silver content and minting techniques match other Norse coins of the period. It is not a modern forgery or a stray piece dropped by a collector. Its wear suggests it circulated for some time before being lost, its edges softened by the hands that held it. This authenticity forces us to confront two equally fascinating possibilities, each redrawing the map of pre-Columbian contact in a different way. The first and most dramatic theory is one of expanded exploration. Could a Norse expedition have sailed farther south along the North American coast than we have evidence for, perhaps reaching the shores of present-day New England? A single storm-blown Nar venturing down the coast from a base in Vinland might have made contact, traded, and left this coin behind. It is a compelling narrative, a hint of footprints in the sand just beyond the light of our historical lantern. The second theory, however, is perhaps more revolutionary in its implications. It suggests the coin may never have been touched by a Viking in the New World at all. Instead, it could have traveled south through the vast, intricate indigenous trade networks that crisscrossed the continent for millennia. A Norse object acquired in Newfoundland or Labrador by the Thule or Dorset peoples could have been traded from hand to hand, community to community, moving slowly inland and southward over generations as a rare and curious item. This theory paints a picture of a connected Americas, where a piece of silver from a Norwegian king could, across 2 centuries, find its way to a coastal settlement in Maine through purely native channels. The Maine penny's power lies in its refusal to choose between these stories. It is a testament to the incredible mobility of objects and the limitations of our knowledge. We have a starting point and an ending point, but the journey in between is a blank space on the map. It challenges the old textbook division between a Viking chapter and a later Columbus chapter in the story of the Americas, suggesting instead a more complex, intermittent, and multidirectional flow of people and things. This one coin, no larger than a fingernail, becomes a lens focusing our attention on the dynamic, living networks that existed long before European permanent settlement. It asks us to reconsider the continent not as a static wilderness awaiting discovery, but as a place of ancient exchange where a strange silver disk from across the sea could become a treasured possession, a ceremonial item, or simply a lost trinket, waiting in the soil to tell a fraction of a story we are only beginning to comprehend. Sometimes the most captivating mysteries are those that never truly existed. The story of the Dropa stones is a perfect artifact of the modern imagination, a tale that emerged not from an archaeological dig, but from the shadowy crossroads of sensational journalism and our deep desire to find visitors from the stars. According to the now infamous narrative, in 1938, a Chinese archaeologist named Kai Pu-te discovered a series of burial caves in the remote Bayan Ha Mountains. Inside, he reportedly found the skeletal remains of small, large-headed beings, and alongside them, hundreds of stone discs, each with a hole in its center and a fine spiral groove that, when examined, revealed a series of microscopic hieroglyphics. The translation, as the story goes, told a sorrowful epic of a peaceful alien race called the Dropa, whose spacecraft crashed on Earth thousands of years ago, leaving them stranded and unable to repair their vessel. It is a compelling science fiction premise, complete with ancient astronauts and a lost alien legacy. Yet, despite its persistence in popular culture, this story has been thoroughly dismantled by mainstream archaeology and investigative journalism. No reputable scientific institution has ever examined a verified Dropa stone. The principal figures in the tale, like Kai Pu-te, are untraceable in academic records. The photographs that occasionally surface are often of unrelated artifacts or modern carvings. In essence, the entire edifice of the story crumbles under the most basic scrutiny for provenance and evidence. The likely origin of the so-called stones is far more earthly. They are probably misidentified by discs, common Neolithic Chinese artifacts made of jade or stone, which were ceremonial items with a central hole, sometimes decorated with carvings. The fantastical narrative appears to have been woven in the 1960s by authors of speculative books, blending elements of earlier flying saucer lore with a completely fictional archaeological discovery. This case, however, is far from worthless. It serves as a crucial, sobering lesson in the scientific method. It highlights the immense gulf between a good story and good evidence. Real archaeology progresses through painstaking steps: excavation, documentation, peer-reviewed analysis, and the constant, humbling willingness to be proven wrong. The Dropa tale bypasses all of that, offering a complete narrative without a single verifiable piece of the puzzle. It underscores why the gatekeepers of science, like peer review and institutional verification, are not barriers to wonder, but essential defenses against deception and wishful thinking. The enduring appeal of the story speaks to a genuine human longing, the desire for our lonely planet to have had company in the vast cosmos, and for our ancient past to hold secrets grander than our own humble origins. But the Dropa stones caution us to direct that wonder toward the genuine, verifiable mysteries that still surround us, the ones grounded in physical evidence, waiting for the light of rigorous inquiry to reveal their true, and often equally astonishing, human story. Granite can carry a message for the ages or become a target in a single night. In the quiet farmlands of Elbert County, Georgia, a stark and geometric monument rose in the year 1980. Known as the Georgia Guidestones, this assemblage of 6 granite slabs, standing over 19 feet tall and capped with a massive lintel stone, was inscribed with a set of 10 principles in 8 modern languages, with a shorter message in 4 ancient scripts carved into the capstone. Its directives, advocating for a future guided by reason, sustainability, and global harmony, were meant to serve as a guide for a post-crisis humanity. Yet from its inception, the monument was cloaked in an immediate and modern mystery, its sponsors hidden behind the pseudonym R.C. Christian, claiming to represent a small group of loyal Americans. This deliberate anonymity transformed the stones from a public monument into an instant archaeological puzzle, a contemporary artifact whose origin story was deliberately erased at the moment of its creation. The stones did not slowly accrue mystery over centuries, they were born enigmatic. This very quality, the gap between the very public message and the utterly private messengers, created a vacuum. Into that vacuum rushed a torrent of interpretation, speculation, and ultimately, dark conspiracy. The Guidestones' call for managed population sizes and international courts was read by some not as aspirational ideals, but as evidence of a shadowy elite planning a sinister new world order. The monument became a polarizing symbol, a Rorschach test in granite where people saw either a hopeful blueprint or a threatening manifesto. Its physical reality as a modern megalith placed with clear intent yet opaque purpose made it a unique anomaly, a future relic that never had a past. Its story reached a sudden, violent conclusion in the summer of 2022 when an explosion severely damaged the structure, leading authorities to demolish the remainder for safety reasons. This act of destruction completed its transformation from a modern monument into a genuine archaeological site. Now, future researchers will have to piece together its history from fragments, just as we do with ancient temples and fallen stelae. They will confront the same questions we ask of Göbekli Tepe or the Nazca lines: who built this and why? The stone's brief lifespan offers a profound lesson in how quickly meaning can be assigned, contested, and ultimately, how a place can become sacred or accursed not over millennia but in a matter of decades. The Georgia Guidestones demonstrate that an artifact's power to mystify is not a function of its age, but of the deliberate distance between its creation and our understanding. They stand now in memory as a testament to the fact that the archaeological record is being written in real time, and that some of its most puzzling entries are being created by hands we cannot name, for reasons we are left to decipher long after the final stone has fallen. The quiet hills of northern Laos hold a landscape of silent vessels, scattered across dozens of sites. Thousands of massive stone jars, some standing over 3 meters tall and weighing several tons, rest in mysterious clusters on the ground. Known as the Plain of Jars, this megalithic landscape dates from around 500 years before the Common Era to 500 years after, the work of an Iron Age culture that left no written records to explain their purpose. For decades, the jars were an enigma framed by sheer logistical wonder. How were they quarried, carved, and transported? And what profound need could justify such an immense investment of labor? Early theories ranged from giant rice wine fermenters to storage containers for monsoon rainwater, but the truth, slowly being uncovered by modern archaeology, is both more intimate and culturally profound. Recent excavations around the jar sites have revealed pits containing human bones, along with ceramic grave goods and quartz stones. Forensic analysis of these remains suggests a complex funerary practice. The evidence points toward a process of excarnation, where the deceased would be placed inside or perhaps beside the great jars, allowing the natural elements to complete a cycle of return. After this, the collected bones would be carefully buried in dedicated pits nearby, with the jars serving as monumental and permanent markers for these communal resting places. This interpretation transforms the plain from a field of storage containers into a sacred cemetery, a vast city of the dead where stone guardians watched over a ritual of sky and earth. Unlocking this mystery has been fraught with a modern, deadly peril. The region was heavily bombed during the Vietnam War, leaving the landscape littered with unexploded ordnance. For years, this made systematic archaeological survey not just difficult but lethally dangerous, locking the jars away from science. Now, through painstaking clearance work by specialist teams, safe access is gradually being restored. Researchers are using drones and ground-penetrating radar to map the full extent of the sites, revealing patterns in the jar placements that may correspond to clan groups or social status. Each jar, uniquely shaped and sized, is being digitally catalogued, its placement and orientation studied for celestial or geographical alignment. The ongoing work is a powerful collaboration between bomb disposal experts and archaeologists, a race against time to understand a culture's reverence for its ancestors before the last clues fade. The jars stand as stoic witnesses to a deeply held belief in the journey after life, their open mouths forever turned toward the sky, a silent dialogue between the community below and the heavens above, waiting patiently for their story to be heard. A forest of stone can reorient an entire landscape. Along the wind-swept coast of Brittany in France, the Karnak alignments present a spectacle of organized magnitude that has captivated observers for centuries. Here, over 3,000 individual standing stones, or menhirs, are arranged in long, parallel rows stretching for kilometers across the countryside. They are not a random scattering, but a deliberate, sprawling composition, one of the most extensive Neolithic monuments on Earth. For generations, the dominant question has been straightforward yet profound. What was the purpose of moving and erecting so many colossal stones, some weighing over 300 tons, into these precise formations? The classic theories are grand in scope: an astronomical calendar tracking the solstices and equinoxes, a sacred processional way for religious ceremonies, or a formidable statement of territorial control by a powerful chiefdom. Each interpretation speaks to a different facet of the Neolithic mind, whether it was looking to the heavens, honoring the divine, or marking the earth as its own. Yet the stones themselves have been frustratingly silent, and worse, their original configuration has been altered by time. Over millennia, many menhirs were toppled for farmland, repurposed as building material for later villages, or simply disappeared. The alignments we see today are a fragmentary echo of the original design, making any attempt to decode their purpose an exercise in reconstructing a ghost. This is where modern technology steps in as a digital time machine. Archaeologists are no longer limited to studying just the stones that remain upright. They are employing advanced geomagnetic surveys and ground-penetrating radar to detect the buried footprints of missing megaliths, the subtle disturbances in the soil where a stone once stood for thousands of years. This data is fed into powerful computers, creating intricate three-dimensional models of the landscape as it likely appeared over 5,000 years ago. These digital reconstructions are not mere speculation. They are evidence-based hypotheses, allowing researchers to virtually restore fallen stones to their original positions and analyze the complete patterns. The goal is breathtakingly ambitious: to see the alignments through the eyes of their builders. By modeling the original sightlines, researchers can test astronomical theories with new precision, calculating whether specific rows pointed to the rising of a particular star on a significant date. They can analyze the spatial relationships between the rows and the surrounding topography, searching for connections to water sources, burial mounds, or other ceremonial sites that might reveal a larger ritual landscape. This work moves beyond simply asking what the stones were for and begins to ask what they did. How did moving through these silent, towering corridors affect a person? Did the repetitive rhythm of the stones induce a meditative or trance-like state for participants in a ceremony? Did the alignments create a physical representation of a clan's lineage or mythology, a story in stone walked with the feet rather than told with words? The latest research suggests the purpose may not have been singular but cumulative. The alignments could have functioned simultaneously as an astronomical observatory, a territorial marker, and a sacred space, their meaning layered like the strata of the earth itself. The true revelation of Karnak may be that the Neolithic mind did not compartmentalize science, politics, and spirituality the way we often do. To arrange the landscape on such a scale was an act of world-building, a way to weave human order into the fabric of nature, creating a permanent, tangible interface between the community, the cosmos, and the land they called home. Each stone, then, is not an isolated monument, but a word in a vast, silent sentence written across the earth, a sentence we are only now learning to read by first learning how to see the missing words. The human form has always been a canvas for the imagination, but some ancient artists painted with a startlingly different palette. In the fertile plains of prehistoric Mesopotamia, the Ubaid culture laid the groundwork for the world's first cities, and among their pottery and tools, they left behind a collection of figurines that defy simple categorization. Crafted between 5,500 and 4,000 years before the Common Era, these statuettes are known as the Ubaid lizardmen. They are artistically sophisticated, with smooth, elongated bodies and carefully rendered poses, yet their features are a deliberate and unsettling fusion: humanoid figures with distinctly reptilian heads, featuring slanted eyes, pronounced snouts, and what appear to be scaly textures. Many are depicted in postures of care, often cradling infants who share the same hybrid features. This is not a case of crude representation, but a conscious, repeated choice to blend two forms of life that are utterly separate in the natural world. The immediate, modern instinct might leap to speculative explanations, but archaeology demands we first listen to the context. These artifacts come from a culture on the cusp of civilization, a society developing agriculture, permanent settlements, and the first inklings of social hierarchy. In such a world, art was rarely just decorative, it was functional, charged with meaning. So what profound idea required the form of a lizard person? Mainstream scholarship offers several interpretations, each rooted in the symbolic language of early belief systems. One prominent theory views them as shamanistic representations. In many indigenous cultures, transformation is a core spiritual concept. The idea that a ritual specialist can take on the attributes of an animal to bridge the human and spirit worlds. A figurine combining human and reptilian traits might represent such a mediator, a being capable of moving between realms, perhaps to ensure fertility or communicate with ancestors. The nurturing pose holding a hybrid child could symbolize the shaman's role in fostering the community's spiritual well-being. Another interpretation places them in the realm of early deities. Before the gods of Sumer took fully anthropomorphic form, divine forces may have been conceived as composite beings, embodying the power and mystery of the animal world. The lizard, with its ability to regenerate its tail and its connection to both land and water, could symbolize regeneration, adaptability, or primordial life forces. The figurines would then be votive objects placed in homes or shrines to invoke protection and continuity for the family line. A third, more symbolic reading suggests they are not portraits of beings but embodiments of concepts. The blending of human and reptile might represent a duality, such as the union of earth and water, or the transition from a wild, primordial state to a settled human one. The infant held by the adult figure could symbolize the birth of this new, hybrid civilization itself, nurtured by the ancient powers of the natural world. Modern analysis focuses on the figurines themselves, studying the clay composition to trace their origin and examining wear patterns to understand how they were handled. Were they passed down through generations or used in specific ceremonies? The lack of any written context from the Ubaid people means the answer lies in this physical, tactile evidence. These silent figures challenge a linear view of religious evolution. They suggest that humanity's first attempts to visualize the divine or the supernatural were not straightforward imitations of people or animals, but ventures into a symbolic space where forms could be mixed to express complex, intangible ideas. The Ubaid lizardmen are a reminder that our ancestors saw connections and possibilities in the world that our modern, categorized minds might overlook. They are not evidence of literal lizard people, but of a fluid, creative spirituality that could sculpt clay into a question, a prayer, or a story about where we come from and who we might become. Sonar paints a picture in sound, a ghostly outline of the unseen. In the year 2011, a team of Swedish treasure hunters were scanning the floor of the Baltic Sea with side-scan sonar when their screens revealed something utterly unexpected. Resting on the seabed at a depth of nearly 90 meters was a nearly perfect circular formation roughly 60 meters in diameter. The sonar images showed a distinct disc-like shape with a rigid, geometric appearance, complete with what looked like a long, straight runway or tail extending behind it, and a series of smaller, circular features on its surface. In the shadowy, low-resolution world of deep-sea sonar, the object looked for all the world like the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars or some other fantastical craft that had come to rest on the murky bottom. The immediate viral reaction was electric. Had a team of amateur explorers just found a crashed, unidentified flying object. The so-called Baltic Sea anomaly became an instant internet sensation, a modern myth born from pixels and pressure. Yet, as with all compelling mysteries, the story deepens when science begins its slow, methodical interrogation of the data. The first teams to return for closer investigation faced immediate and formidable challenges. The Baltic Sea at that depth is pitch black, bitterly cold, and the site is shrouded in a persistent, thick layer of what divers described as a strange, soot-like sediment that reduced visibility to almost nothing and caused electronic equipment to malfunction. The samples they managed to retrieve were not exotic alloys but pieces of basalt rock, a common volcanic stone. Geologists who examined the sonar data and the limited physical evidence proposed a far more terrestrial, though no less fascinating, explanation. The Baltic Sea region was ground zero for the powerful glaciers of the last ice age. As these continent-spanning ice sheets advanced and retreated, they acted like colossal bulldozers, scraping up bedrock and depositing it in massive piles called moraines. They also carried and dropped immense, isolated boulders known as glacial erratics. The leading scientific hypothesis is that the anomaly is one of these natural glacial formations, perhaps a large moraine deposit that, through a quirk of sonar imaging and our own pattern-seeking minds, appears unnaturally geometric. The straight tail could be a trail of debris left by a retreating glacier, and the smaller circles might be other large boulders. This geological explanation accounts for the composition and the context, but it struggles to completely silence the intrigue. Why does the main structure appear so perfectly circular in multiple scans? Could a purely natural process create such a symmetrical form? This lingering doubt is the anomaly's true legacy. It serves as a masterful case study in the psychology of discovery in the 21st century. Our most powerful tools for exploration, like deep-sea sonar and satellite imagery, now routinely reveal shapes and patterns that are ambiguous by their very nature. They offer a silhouette without substance, a Rorschach test projected onto the landscape of another world. In the absence of clear, high-resolution visuals, our imagination, fueled by decades of science fiction, rushes in to provide a narrative. The anomaly highlights the crucial, often unseen, second step in modern exploration. The initial discovery, the thrilling blip on the screen, is only the beginning. The real work is the difficult, expensive, and sometimes dangerous process of ground truthing, of sending a submersible or a dive team to physically touch, sample, and photograph the site to replace speculation with evidence. For many such mysteries, that second step never happens, leaving them suspended in a state of tantalizing possibility. The Baltic Sea anomaly, therefore, is less about a potential spaceship and more about a fundamental human moment. It represents the exhilarating collision between our advanced technology and our ancient curiosity, a reminder that the ocean floor, much of which remains unmapped, is the last great frontier on our own planet. It challenges us to temper our wonder with patience, to celebrate the discovery of a strange shape, but to reserve judgment until the slow, careful light of science can illuminate what, in the end, is most likely a magnificent work of natural art sculpted by ice and time. A book can be a prison, and a prison can become a legend. In a vault in the National Library of Sweden rests a volume so large it is known as the Devil's Bible, the Codex Gigas. Created in the early 13th century within the walls of a Bohemian monastery, this manuscript is a leviathan of parchment, standing nearly 3 feet tall, 1.5 feet wide, and weighing over 160 pounds. Its pages contain a complete Latin Bible, historical texts, medical cures, and even an exorcism manual, a veritable encyclopedia of medieval knowledge bound in a single, staggering tome. The true anomaly, however, is not merely its size, but the story of its creation, a tale where human endurance blurs into the supernatural. Medieval legend whispers that the Codex was the work of a single doomed monk. Having broken his vows, he was sentenced to be walled up alive. In desperation, he promised to create a book containing all human knowledge in a single night to atone for his transgression. As midnight approached and the task proved impossible, he prayed not to God but to the fallen angel Lucifer, who finished the manuscript in exchange for the monk's soul. The proof, the story says, is on page 290, a haunting, full-page portrait of the devil himself, alone in an otherwise sacred text. While historians dismiss the pact as folklore, the physical reality of the Codex presents a mystery almost as compelling. The entire manuscript, from Genesis to the final medical charms, is written in a remarkably consistent hand. The style, spacing, and flow of ink show no signs of multiple scribes taking shifts over the years, as was standard practice for such a monumental work. Paleographers, experts in ancient handwriting, have scrutinized every letter. They find no telltale variations in pressure, no shifts in linguistic style, no evidence of different hands relieving one another. This suggests a single individual may have been responsible for the entirety of the text, a feat of physical and mental stamina that defies belief. To produce a work of this scale by oneself would have required a lifetime of dedication, an estimated 20 to 30 years of daily, disciplined labor. Imagine the process stretching across decades. The scribe would have had to prepare the parchment from the skins of perhaps 160 donkeys, carefully scraping and stretching each hide. He would have mixed gallons of ink from oak galls and iron salts, trimmed countless quills, and then, day after day, year after year, bent over the massive pages in the dim light of his scriptorium, copying millions of words with unwavering precision. The mental focus required to maintain such uniformity without a single catastrophic error is itself a kind of miracle. Modern science is now probing the manuscript to understand the human story behind the myth. Researchers use multispectral imaging to look beneath the surface of the ink, analyzing its chemical composition across different sections to see if subtle variations might reveal a longer, more collaborative timeline. They study the wear patterns on the parchment, the flow of the script, and even the potential for minute changes in the scribe's hand as he aged. Each test seeks to answer the fundamental question: was this truly the work of one lifetime, or a masterful orchestration by a dedicated team so skilled their individual styles became one? Regardless of the answer, the Codex Gigas stands as a monument to a very human kind of obsession. The devil on page 290, grinning from the vellum, is less a sign of an infernal pact and more a reflection of the medieval mind's need to explain the inexplicable. When confronted with an object of such monumental, solitary effort, the culture that produced it could only comprehend the dedication as something superhuman, a bargain struck beyond the realm of mortals. The true pact was not with Lucifer, but with the work itself, a lifetime traded for the creation of a world contained within leather and ink, a silent, heavy witness to the lengths one person might go to leave a permanent mark on history. A hill can become a pyramid if you want it to be. In the small town of Visoko, Bosnia, a cluster of forested hills has ignited one of the most heated and instructive controversies in modern archaeology. Since 2005, claims have circulated that these are not hills at all, but the oldest and largest pyramids on Earth, built by a lost civilization over 12,000 years ago and simply covered by soil and trees. Proponents point to the hill's symmetrical, pyramid-like shape, apparent stone terraces, and underground tunnels as proof of a monumental, hidden history. The emotional appeal is powerful, the idea that a forgotten, advanced culture left its mark in the heart of Europe, waiting to be recognized. This narrative, however, collides directly with the established processes of geological science, creating a stark case study in how we distinguish human intention from the artistry of nature. Mainstream archaeologists and geologists from institutions across Europe have conducted extensive, independent surveys of the site. Their tools are not speculative, they are empirical, ground-penetrating radar, core drilling, satellite imagery analysis, and meticulous soil stratigraphy. The consensus from these studies is unequivocal. The hills are natural formations, specifically flat-topped mesas composed of sedimentary layers of clay, sandstone, and conglomerate, shaped over millions of years by tectonic uplift and erosion. The so-called stone blocks are actually fractured sedimentary rock, a common geological feature, and the angles of the hills align with the natural dip of the bedrock, not with any intentional architectural plan. The underground tunnels, while intriguing, show no evidence of ancient tool marks and are consistent with natural fissures or possibly medieval mining activity. This controversy illuminates a critical, often unseen, pillar of archaeology, its rigorous methodology. The field does not progress on the basis of shape alone. It demands a chain of evidence, tool marks on stone that match known techniques, mortar or joining materials that indicate construction, artifacts found in a clear, undisturbed stratigraphic layer that dates the site, and a cultural context that makes such a project plausible. At Visoko, this chain is broken at every link. The desire to find a lost civilization is a profoundly human impulse, a reflection of our hunger for grand narratives and hidden truths. Yet the Bosnian hills remind us that nature is a master architect, capable of producing forms of breathtaking symmetry and scale that can mimic human work. The scientific process, in this instance, acts not as a spoiler of wonder but as a guardian of intellectual integrity. It asks us to temper our excitement with patience, to subject extraordinary claims to ordinary, meticulous testing. This does not diminish the value of the site, but redefines it. The true lesson lies in understanding the powerful forces that sculpt our planet, and in recognizing that the discipline of archaeology earns its authority not by confirming our fantasies, but by following the evidence wherever it may lead, even if that path ends at the foot of a beautiful, entirely natural hill. The desert holds its secrets in linen and hair. In the vast, silent expanse of China's Taklamakan Desert, a place whose name whispers of oblivion, the dry sands have performed an act of profound preservation. Here, archaeologists have uncovered the Tarim mummies, individuals laid to rest as early as 1800 years before the Common Era. Their state of preservation is startling, with facial features intact, hair still light brown or blonde, and clothing woven in intricate patterns of wool and felt that look astonishingly like Celtic tartans. To look upon them is to confront a geographical dissonance, for their appearance is distinctly Caucasian, a fact that seemed to place them thousands of miles from their expected homeland in the heart of Asia. For decades, their very existence sparked intense debate and speculation, a puzzle of identity written in skin and cloth. Were they lost travelers from the West, evidence of a forgotten colony, or did they represent a much older, unknown branch of humanity? The answer, revealed by cutting-edge genetic science, is both more straightforward and more revolutionary than any simple tale of lost tribes. Researchers extracted ancient DNA from the remains, sequencing genomes that had been locked in time for nearly 4 millennia. The analysis delivered a clear verdict: these individuals were not recent migrants from Europe. Their ancestry traced back primarily to the ancient North Eurasians, a prehistoric population whose descendants contributed to both European and Native American gene pools, but who themselves had largely vanished from the world. This genetic signature showed they had been isolated in the Tarim Basin for a very long time, developing their unique culture in situ, with only minimal mixing with neighboring populations. This discovery fundamentally rewrites the scene. It tells us that the features we associate with the West were present in Central Asia far earlier than previously documented, carried by a deeply ancient lineage that had found a home in this harsh, inland sea of sand. Their sophisticated textiles, including the now famous plaid twills, were not imports but local innovations, a testament to their adaptation and skill. The presence of the Tarim mummies challenges the modern map we instinctively project onto the ancient world. It dissolves rigid ideas of ethnic boundaries and static populations, revealing instead a dynamic, early chapter of human movement and settlement. Long before the historical Silk Road formalized trade, the seeds of connection were already sown by the movements of people like these. They were not outliers on the edge of someone else's story, but central players in their own enduring narrative, a community that thrived at the crossroads of continents, weaving a unique cultural identity from threads of deep antiquity. Their legacy is a powerful reminder that humanity's story has always been one of unexpected journeys, and that our ancestors often dwelled in places and bore appearances that our simplified histories have yet to fully comprehend. Straight lines drawn across the earth speak of a different kind of intention. High on the Bolivian Altiplano, near the snow-capped peak of Mount Sacsayhuamán, the land is inscribed with a geometric puzzle of staggering scale. Known as the Sacsayhuamán lines, this is not a collection of images, but a vast network of thousands upon thousands of perfectly straight paths, etched into the dark desert pavement by the simple act of removing stones to reveal the lighter soil beneath. Some of these lines run for over 20 kilometers, arrow straight across valleys and over hills, maintaining their unwavering course with an accuracy that seems to defy the rugged terrain. Created by indigenous cultures over 3,000 years ago, they form a web so dense that from the ground, one can stand at the intersection of several lines, each vanishing into the horizon in a different direction. Unlike the figurative animals of Nazca, these lines are purely geometric, a statement in length and direction rather than shape. Their sheer abundance raises a profound question of logistics. What kind of social coordination could produce a linear landscape on this continental scale? The purpose of these lines remains an open conversation with the past. One compelling theory sees them as sacred pilgrimage routes, physical pathways for ceremonial journeys that connected communities to sacred mountains like Sacsayhuamán itself, which was considered a living deity. Walking these straight lines may have been a form of devotional practice, a way to physically trace a connection between the human realm and the Apus, the mountain spirits. Another interpretation views them as colossal territorial markers, a way for different clans or communities to delineate their domains in a landscape with few natural boundaries. The lines could have served as mutually recognized borders, their very straightness a symbol of clarity and agreement. A third possibility links them to the cosmos, as many of the longer lines align with the rising or setting points of the sun, moon, or significant stars on key dates, turning the entire plateau into a sprawling astronomical observatory. Modern technology is finally allowing us to see this network in its full, breathtaking complexity. Where ground surveys are hindered by the line's immense length and the region's vastness, satellite imagery and drone photography have become essential tools. Researchers are stitching together high-resolution images to map the full extent of the lines, revealing patterns and intersections invisible from any single vantage point. This cartography of antiquity is showing that the lines are not random, they form a coherent, interconnected system. Ground surveys then follow, examining the points where lines converge, searching for small ceremonial platforms, cairns, or pottery fragments that might hint at their use. This work reveals the immense social organization behind their creation. To plan and execute a 20-kilometer straight line across difficult terrain requires not just labor, but shared purpose, advanced knowledge of surveying, and a communication system that could coordinate teams working miles apart. The Sacsayhuamán lines, therefore, are a testament to a different kind of monumentality. They represent not the concentration of effort in one sacred space, but the diffusion of meaning across an entire region. They transformed the whole land into a canvas for a communal idea, whether that idea was about territory, worship, or the stars. In their silent, relentless geometry, they offer a map of a society's mind, a culture that chose to write its most important concepts not on stone or parchment, but directly onto the skin of the earth, in lines so long they can only be read by the horizon. A perfect geometric shape can be the most frustrating mystery of all. Scattered from Britain to Hungary, over 100 small, hollow objects cast in bronze or occasionally stone defy the modern urge to categorize. Known as Roman dodecahedra, each is a marvel of precise craftsmanship, a 12-sided form where every face is an identical pentagon. But the true puzzle is not their shape, but the holes, a circular opening of a different diameter drilled perfectly into the center of each of the 12 faces. Ranging from the size of a golf ball to that of a large apple, these artifacts date from the 2nd to the 4th centuries of the Common Era, found in the soil of a civilization whose records are otherwise famously meticulous. Yet in all of Roman literature, art, or administrative graffiti, there is not a single mention, drawing, or inventory listing of these objects. They are ghosts in the archaeological record, common enough to have been widespread, but silent enough to have carried their secret across 17 centuries. The immediate challenge they present is one of imagination. We must conceive of a use so ordinary, so embedded in daily life, that no Roman ever thought to write it down. The theories are a fascinating catalogue of human ingenuity projected onto the past. Could they have been decorative candlestick holders, with a taper inserted into different-sized holes to adjust the height of the flame? Perhaps they were a form of dice for a complex game of chance, their many faces offering a range of probabilities. Some have suggested they were tools for surveyors, used to calculate distances or angles for laying out roads and forts. Others propose they were gauges for knitting or net making, the different holes used to standardize the size of mesh or loops. There is even a hypothesis that they were religious or astronomical instruments, their geometry holding cosmic significance. The problem with each of these ideas is that the dodecahedra, when tested, proved to be imperfect fits. As candle holders, they are often unstable and show no soot residue. As dice, they are not random. The holes make them roll awkwardly. As surveying tools, they lack any markings for precise measurement. This very imperfection is the key to their importance. They force archaeologists into a mode of deep humility, to admit that we can excavate a villa, translate its owner's letters, and understand his diet, yet still hold one of his personal possessions without having the faintest idea what he did with it. This is a different kind of mystery than a lost city or an undeciphered script. It is a mystery of the mundane. The dodecahedron was likely not a sacred treasure or a state secret, but an everyday item, a piece of technology so intuitive to its time that its function was transmitted by gesture and practice, not by manual. Its meaning died not with an empire, but with the last person who knew how to hold it. Modern researchers approach them not with grand theories, but with minute observation. They use three-dimensional scanning to compare the exact proportions, and where patterns of every known example, searching for commonalities, a polished edge here, a dent there, that might hint at repeated use. They analyze soil residues trapped inside the hollow core, looking for traces of wax, fiber, or metal that might cling to a specific purpose. Each examination is a quiet conversation with an artifact that refuses to speak. In their silent, geometric perfection, the Roman dodecahedra deliver a profound lesson about the fragility of knowledge. They remind us that history is not just made of wars and emperors, but of countless small, unrecorded actions, the twist of a wrist, the choice of a hole, the solving of a daily problem with a clever bit of bronze. These objects represent the vast ocean of common understanding that evaporates when a culture changes, leaving behind only the strange, beautiful shells of its practicality, waiting on a museum shelf for a meaning they may never surrender. Geometry gave the Neolithic farmers of Europe a voice to speak with the sun. In a quiet field near the town of Göbekli in Germany, a pattern emerged from the wheat that had been invisible for nearly 7,000 years. Aerial photographs revealed the faint, circular imprint of a vast enclosure, a perfect ring etched into the earth from a time before metal, before the wheel, before history as we record it. Excavation confirmed this was not a natural formation, but one of the world's oldest known solar observatories, the Göbekli Circle, built around 4,900 years before the Common Era. This was not a haphazard arrangement of posts, but a meticulously engineered structure. Two concentric rings of wooden palisades, interrupted by three precise gates, created a sacred space nearly 75 meters across. The genius of its design lies in its alignment. The southern and northern gates are not placed at random. They frame the exact points on the horizon where the sun rises and sets on the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. On that pivotal morning, an observer standing at the circle's center would have watched the first sliver of sunlight slice directly through the southeastern gate, casting a beam of light into the heart of the enclosure. As the day progressed, the sun's arc would have been tracked across the sky until its final, fading rays streamed through the southwestern gate at sunset. A third gate to the north, likely aligned with important lunar or stellar events, creating a complete celestial calendar carved from oak and soil. The discovery forces a profound shift in our timeline of knowledge. This sophisticated understanding of the solar cycle predates Stonehenge by over 2 millennia, and it was achieved by a society of early farmers who had only recently settled the land. Their primary concern was survival, tied intimately to the rhythms of the seasons, the planting of crops, and the breeding of livestock. The Göbekli circle reveals that their response to this dependency was not passive hope, but active, precise observation. They invested immense communal labor not in a defensive wall or a storage pit, but in a monumental instrument for measuring time itself. What we see here is the moment astronomy ceased to be mere observation and became architecture. By building a structure that physically captured the sun's most extreme positions, these early Europeans transformed an abstract celestial event into a tangible, communal experience. The circle would have served as both a scientific tool and a ritual theater. On the winter solstice, the community likely gathered within its wooden walls, not just to witness the astronomical turn, but to participate in ceremonies that encouraged the sun's return, that celebrated the promise of lengthening days and the eventual renewal of spring. This intertwining of knowledge and belief is the circle's true legacy. It shows us that for these early agricultural societies, science and spirituality were not separate disciplines, but two sides of the same coin. Understanding the cosmos was essential for survival, and that understanding was revered as a sacred gift. The Göbekli circle marks a pivotal point in the human story, the moment we began to build our calendars not on clay tablets, but into the very landscape, using posts and gates to hold a conversation with the heavens, ensuring that the cycles of life on Earth remained in harmony with the great clockwork of the sky. A piece of cloth can hold the weight of centuries. The Shroud of Turin is a length of linen just over 4 meters long, bearing the faint, straw-colored, full-length image of a man who appears to have suffered physical trauma consistent with historical accounts of Roman crucifixion. For many of the faithful, this is not merely an artifact but a sacred object, venerated as the actual burial cloth of a pivotal figure. Yet for science, it presents a separate and equally compelling puzzle, one that has little to do with faith and everything to do with a stubborn, physical mystery. How was this detailed, hauntingly realistic image created on the fabric? It is not a painting. No pigments or brushstrokes have ever been detected. Instead, the image is a perfect photographic negative, a fact only discovered when a photographer in 1898 first viewed his own glass plate negative and saw the stunningly detailed positive image emerge. This means the shroud itself encodes a positive picture through a reversal of light and dark, a concept centuries ahead of its time. The image resides only on the very topmost microfibers of the linen threads, as if it were a superficial scorch or chemical change. This level of detail and the negative property have made it an enduring anomaly, resisting easy explanation. The most famous scientific intervention came in 1988, when 3 independent laboratories performed radiocarbon dating on a small sample. Their unanimous conclusion placed the cloth's origin between the years 1260 and 1390, squarely in the medieval period. For many, this closed the case, labeling it a sophisticated medieval creation. However, the debate was reignited by questions of context. Critics of the dating noted the sample was taken from a corner of the shroud, an area likely handled and repaired over centuries, potentially contaminated by later carbon from smoke, oils, or even a fire in 1532 that damaged the cloth. They argued this could have skewed the results younger. This controversy highlights a core principle of archaeology. A single test is rarely the final word. it is a data point in an ongoing investigation. Modern research has largely shifted focus away from dating and toward the fascinating forensic puzzle of the image itself. Scientists are now using multispectral imaging and advanced chemical analysis to map the shroud in unprecedented detail. They are examining the precise chemical signature of the image stains, which some studies suggest resemble a caramel-like substance caused by a complex reaction between simple carbohydrates on the linen and amines, possibly from a body. Other experiments have attempted to replicate the image using techniques available in the Middle Ages, such as the careful application of a mild acid or the use of a bas-relief sculpture and sunlight to create a kind of primitive photography through ultraviolet light bleaching. While some of these methods produce shroud-like images, none have perfectly duplicated the unique three-dimensional information encoded in the original, where the intensity of the image correlates precisely with the distance a cloth would drape over a body. This ongoing scientific work reveals something profound about the medieval world we often underestimate. Whether the shroud is a devotional object from the 1300s or something else, its very existence demonstrates that artisans or scholars of that era were capable of conceptualizing and executing a form of image making that borders on the photographic, using chemistry and optics in ways we are still working to fully comprehend. The shroud, therefore, transcends its role in any single debate. It stands as a testament to human ingenuity, a physical riddle that pushes the boundaries of materials science and art history. It asks us to consider not only what was possible in the past, but how an object can become a mirror, reflecting our enduring desire to find meaning, to solve puzzles, and to connect the tangible world with the stories that define us. From the quiet geometry of ancient observatories, we travel to a desert where the earth itself holds colossal figures in its embrace. In the stark, sun-baked plains of the Colorado Desert in California, near the town of Blythe, the ground reveals a secret to those who view it from above. Etched into the desert pavement are immense figures, human forms stretching over 50 meters long, alongside a coiled serpent and a four-legged animal, likely a mountain lion or a horse. These are the Blythe intaglios, a collection of giant geoglyphs created by indigenous cultures, possibly the ancestors of the Mojave or Quechan peoples, by carefully removing the dark, weathered stones known as desert varnish to expose the lighter soil beneath. Their scale is the first mystery, as the full form of these figures is impossible to discern from the ground, becoming coherent only when seen from the height of a nearby hill or, in the modern era, from an aircraft. This invisible artistry connects them directly to the tradition of the Nazca lines, a deliberate choice to create images for a viewer not of this world, perhaps meant for the eyes of the spirits or the gods in the sky. The question of their age is a puzzle still being assembled. Estimates vary widely from around 450 to 2,000 years old, a range that speaks to the difficulty of dating such ephemeral earthworks. Unlike a buried artifact, the intaglios offer no charcoal for radiocarbon dating, no pottery shards in a sealed layer. Their chronology must be pieced together from more subtle clues, like the rate of desert varnish reformation on the cleared pathways, or by associating their style with the known migration and settlement patterns of the region's indigenous cultures. This uncertainty, however, does not diminish their power, it amplifies it, placing them in a long, continuous tradition of landscape art. Their purpose is deeply rooted in the spiritual and social fabric of the creators. Anthropologists and tribal historians suggest they were likely ceremonial sites, central to important rituals or creation stories. The human figures may represent Mastamho, a central creator deity in Mojave cosmology, who taught the people how to live and gave them the river. The animal figures could be spirit helpers or totems representing specific clans, their giant forms mapping mythology and social identity directly onto the land. To walk these outlines during a ceremony would have been to physically step into a story, to become part of a living narrative that connected the community to its origins and its environment. Today, the greatest challenge is one of preservation. These fragile lines, surviving for centuries in a stable desert climate, now face threats from modern encroachment, off-road vehicle traffic, and even unintentional vandalism. The act of walking on the geoglyphs damages the delicate cleared surfaces, accelerating erosion. In response, preservation efforts led by tribal groups, government agencies, and archaeologists have focused on fencing the sites and educating the public. Crucially, technology has become a guardian. Aerial photography and LiDAR scanning are used to create precise, permanent digital records of every groove and curve. These maps are not just for study, they serve as a baseline to monitor change and damage over time, and they ensure that even if the physical lines were to fade, their form and cultural significance are preserved forever in a virtual space. The blithe intaglios remind us that sacred geography exists in many forms. They are a testament to a way of seeing the land not as a resource to be owned, but as a canvas for memory, a page in a communal book written with stones and patience. They ask us to look at our landscapes with different eyes, to consider that the ground beneath us might hold stories too large to see from where we stand, waiting for a shift in perspective to reveal the giants sleeping in the dust. Sometimes the past is not a memory but a grasp away. In a remote cave system on New Zealand's South Island, explorers made a discovery that felt less like archaeology and more like a moment out of time. There, nestled in the sediment, was not a bone but a complete claw, its sharp talons still curved, its scaly skin intact, and the desiccated muscle and sinew still clinging to the bone as if the creature had only just let go. This was the claw of an upland moa, a giant, flightless bird that stood over 3 meters tall, and it had been resting in that dark, silent chamber for more than 3,000 years. The shock of such a find is visceral. This was not a fossil where minerals have slowly replaced organic matter over eons. This was preservation, a piece of the living animal halted in its decay, offering a tactile, almost intimate connection to a world that vanished centuries ago. The cave itself was the perfect time capsule, its environment cool, dry, and stable, creating conditions that arrested the usual processes of decomposition. In that constant darkness, free from the fluctuations of temperature and humidity that break down tissue, the claw simply waited, a biological snapshot sealed in stone. While not a crafted artifact, this claw stands as one of archaeology's most profound natural anomalies. Its value is not in what humans made, but in what it allows us to recover. For scientists, it is a treasure trove of data that mere bones cannot provide. The preserved soft tissue yielded pristine ancient DNA, giving geneticists an uncorrupted blueprint of the species, allowing them to map its lineage and understand its place in the avian family tree with a clarity impossible from fossilized remains alone. Biologists could study the structure of the tendons and muscles, gaining insights into how the moa moved and used its powerful legs. Even the chemistry of the skin and claws can reveal details about the bird's diet and the environment it inhabited. This single, well-preserved body part becomes a key to reconstructing an entire lost creature. Yet beyond the laboratory data, the claw holds a heavier, more poignant story. The upland moa, like all moa species, was hunted to extinction by the early Polynesian settlers, the Maori ancestors, who arrived in New Zealand around the late 13th century. In a land that had never known terrestrial mammals, these giant birds were an abundant food source, and with no natural predators, they were tragically vulnerable to this new and efficient hunter. Within a few centuries, all 9 species of moa were gone, their ecological niche left empty. The claw, therefore, is a direct physical link to that moment of profound change. It is a relic from the brief period of overlap when humans first encountered these incredible animals. Holding it, even in a photograph, we are not just looking at a specimen, we are touching the edge of a vanished equilibrium. It makes the abstraction of extinction concrete. This is not a theory about overhunting. It is the very tool a bird used to walk through its ancient forests, now silent. The anomaly of its preservation forces us to confront the fragility of ecosystems and the irreversible impact of human arrival in a pristine environment. It is a humbling reminder that our species' story is often written alongside the stories of those we have displaced. The Mount Owen claw does not accuse, it simply bears witness. It offers a chance for understanding, not judgment, providing irreplaceable knowledge about a creature we will never see alive. In its dry, curled form, we find a monument to a lost world, and a powerful reason to listen more carefully to the quiet echoes of the past, for they still have much to teach us about stewardship, loss, and the deep, interconnected threads of life we are only beginning to trace. Nature's workshop can produce forms of startling perfection. In the mineral-rich deposits of South Africa, miners have occasionally unearthed small, metallic spheres and discs, often no larger than a walnut, with a strange and compelling appearance. Known as the Klerksdorp spheres, these objects are typically found embedded in layers of pyrophyllite, a mineral dated to an astonishing 2.8 billion years old. To the untrained eye, they look uncannily manufactured, with smooth surfaces, precise equatorial grooves, and a symmetry that seems to whisper of a toolmaker's hand. Their discovery in such ancient rock has led some to propose they are artifacts from a lost, pre-human civilization, or even visitors from beyond our world, a classic example of what is termed an out-of-place artifact. The emotional pull is strong, the idea that our planet's deep history might hide evidence of other intelligent designers. Yet, when these objects are placed under the meticulous gaze of geology, a different, equally fascinating story of natural artistry emerges. Geologists point to a common and well-understood process, the formation of concretions. These are not manufactured items, but natural accumulations where mineral cement, often hematite or wollastonite, precipitates from groundwater and slowly builds up in concentric layers around a tiny nucleus, like a grain of sand or a fossil fragment. Over immense spans of time, this process can create spheres of remarkable regularity. The fine grooves or ridges that sometimes circle them are not tool marks, but likely the result of crystalline growth patterns or the layering of different mineral compositions as the concretion formed, much like the rings inside a tree. The key lesson here is one of scale and process. In a laboratory, a human artisan might carve such a sphere in hours. In nature, the same level of geometric refinement is achievable, but it requires the patient, blind chemistry of mineral-rich water percolating through rock for millions, even billions of years. This anomaly, therefore, becomes a masterclass in a critical scientific skill, distinguishing between a pattern that implies intention and one that is simply the elegant byproduct of physical laws. It highlights a common cognitive bias known as pareidolia, our brain's powerful, automatic tendency to find familiar shapes, especially those that look designed in random natural formations. We see a face in a cloud, a figure in a rock, or a manufactured artifact in a concretion. The Klerksdorp spheres challenge us to question that first, instinctive interpretation. Researchers use tools like electron microscopy and X-ray diffraction to peer into their structure, revealing the telltale concentric layering and crystalline makeup that confirm a natural, mineralogical origin. There is no evidence of machining, no alloy unknown to nature, no break from the surrounding geological story. Their true value lies not as evidence of ancient astronauts, but as a profound reminder of nature's capacity for mimicry. They teach a principle essential to all archaeological and historical inquiry, the burden of proof. When we encounter something that looks out of place, the responsibility is on us to first exhaust all possible natural explanations before invoking the extraordinary. These small, enigmatic spheres, forged in the deep dark long before the first multicellular life, are ultimately monuments to time itself. They show us that the universe, through simple, persistent rules, can create objects of such symmetry and beauty that they trick us into seeing a creator. In doing so, they sharpen our discernment, training us to appreciate the wondrous complexity of natural processes and to save our awe for the genuine human mysteries still waiting in the soil, mysteries that are no less astonishing for being entirely our own. A stone tower in Newport, Rhode Island, stands as a lesson in how easily a building can become a story. The Newport Tower, with its 8 round columns and arched windows, looks unlike any other colonial structure in New England. Its circular form and mysterious presence have long fueled a captivating alternative history, suggesting it was built by Vikings during their brief Vinland explorations, or even by the enigmatic Knights Templar fleeing persecution in Europe centuries before Columbus. The romantic allure is undeniable, a silent sentinel from a forgotten age of transatlantic voyages, a piece of medieval Europe planted on American soil. Yet the true story of the tower, revealed through the patient convergence of multiple scientific disciplines, is a powerful testament to how archaeology separates compelling fiction from documented fact. Architectural historians began by looking closely at its design. The tower's construction, with its mortared fieldstone and specific arch shapes, finds direct parallels not in Norse longhouses or Templar chapels, but in 17th century English vernacular architecture, particularly in stone windmills and fortified gatehouses from the same period. The layout and proportions are a practical match for a mill, with the central space perfectly sized for grinding gears and the windows positioned to catch the prevailing winds. This architectural fingerprint pointed squarely to the early colonial period. Then came the science of tree rings. Dendrochronologists examined wooden beams embedded in the tower's masonry. By comparing the pattern of wide and narrow growth rings in these timbers to master chronologies from the region, they could pinpoint the exact year the trees were cut down. The results were unequivocal. The wood dated to the mid-1700s, aligning perfectly with the documented ownership of the land by Benedict Arnold, the first colonial governor of Rhode Island, who likely built it as a windmill around 1675. Historical documents from the colonial era further cement this timeline, with land deeds and descriptions referencing the structure in contexts that leave little room for a prehistoric origin. The persistence of the pre-Columbian theories, despite this robust evidence, reveals something profound about our relationship with the past. The tower's unusual shape creates a vacuum of familiarity, and into that vacuum rushes our desire for a grander, more secretive narrative. It becomes a canvas for our collective imagination, a way to connect a local landmark to epic, global tales of exploration and mystery. This is not a failure of curiosity, but a natural human impulse. The discipline of archaeology, however, is built to withstand that impulse. It does not rely on the appeal of a story, but on the unglamorous, meticulous work of correlation. It requires that the architectural evidence, the dendrochronological data, and the paper trail of historical documents all point to the same conclusion. When they do, as with the Newport Tower, the case is considered closed by the standards of the field. The anomaly, in the end, is not in the stone itself, but in the enduring power of a romantic idea to outpace the quiet, convergent voice of evidence, reminding us that sometimes the most fascinating discovery is not a hidden truth, but the clear, documented story we almost overlooked in our search for one. A perfectly smooth stone egg holds a gallery of tiny, puzzling worlds, discovered in 1872 by workers digging a fence post near Lake Winnipesaukee, New Hampshire. This artifact is a masterclass in intimate mystery. Carved from a hard, quartz-rich stone, its surface is a meticulous canvas of symbols that seem to tell a story, yet the language is one we cannot read. On one side, a solemn face gazes outward. Nearby, a classic teepee form stands beside a detailed ear of corn. Other panels show a circle with radiating marks, perhaps a sun or star, and a series of graceful, looping spirals. The craftsmanship is undeniable, the lines clean and purposeful, but the overall message remains stubbornly silent. This is not a grand monument or a lost city, but a handheld enigma, a personal artifact whose journey from creator to soil is a complete blank. Scientific analysis has provided some boundaries, if not answers. Microscopic examination of the holes drilled through the stone's axis revealed telltale markings consistent with the use of metal tools, likely from the 19th century. This places its creation firmly in the post-contact period, ruling out ancient indigenous origins. The stone itself is a type of quartzite, which can be found locally, suggesting it was a product of its time and place. Yet, this factual grounding only deepens the cultural puzzle. Who, in the bustling, industrializing America of the 1800s, would take such care to carve these specific, seemingly indigenous and agrarian symbols onto a stone egg? The most plausible theories point toward the rich world of 19th century folk art and fraternal societies. It could have been a skilled hobbyist's project, perhaps a farmer or a tradesman with an interest in the region's history, creating a curiosity piece. Alternatively, it might have been a ritual object for a local secret society or a Masonic-like group, using symbolic imagery to convey teachings or degrees of membership. The egg shape itself is a near-universal symbol of creation and potential, making it a fitting vessel for encoded knowledge. The Lake Winnipesaukee stone embodies a different kind of historical silence. Its mystery does not stem from immense age or a lost civilization, but from the evaporation of local memory. It is a testament to how quickly the context for a deeply personal object can vanish. The creator likely never imagined his work would need an explanation, believing its meaning was clear to his circle or simply valuable as a private act of craftsmanship. Over a mere few generations, that intimate knowledge faded, leaving behind only the physical object as a beautiful, frustrating question mark. This anomaly reminds us that history is not only made by empires and great events, but also by individual hands in quiet moments. Some of the past's most captivating puzzles are not grand conspiracies, but simply lost conversations, waiting in the form of a polished stone for someone to guess the first forgotten word. The desire to find a lost world can sometimes carve its own evidence from stone. In the 1960s, a Peruvian physician named Javier Cabrera began acquiring a collection of andesite stones from local farmers near the town of Ica. These stones, ranging from the size of a fist to a boulder, were covered in intricate engravings, but their subject matter was what ignited a firestorm. The images depicted creatures indistinguishable from dinosaurs, some locked in combat with human figures. Other stones showed what looked like advanced surgical procedures, including heart transplants and cesarean sections, performed with precise instruments. There were maps of unknown continents and people using telescopes to study the stars. The narrative woven by proponents was electrifying. It appeared to be a literal stone library left by an impossibly ancient, technologically advanced civilization that coexisted with dinosaurs and possessed medical knowledge rivaling our own. It was a story that promised to shatter every textbook. The stones became a sensation, a physical manifesto for alternative histories, and for a time they seemed like the ultimate anomaly. The truth, however, unraveled through the very scientific rigor that defines genuine archaeology. The first and most fatal flaw was provenance, the documented history of an object's origin and ownership. The stones had none. They were always presented as having been found in a cave or a riverbed, but no archaeologist ever witnessed them in a sealed, ancient layer of earth. The farmers who supplied them, when pressed, eventually admitted to creating the engravings themselves. using modern tools like dental drills, and then artificially aging the stones with boot polish and chicken manure. Stylistic analysis delivered the second blow. Experts in pre-Columbian art noted that the engraving technique, incising lines directly into hard andesite, was unknown in authentic Peruvian artifacts. More tellingly, the artistic style was a chaotic pastiche. The dinosaurs were copied directly from mid-20th century dinosaur books and comics, their poses and anatomy mirroring popular illustrations of the time, not based on fossil knowledge an ancient culture would have possessed. The medical scenes were lifted from modern surgical textbooks. This was not the consistent, culturally embedded art of a real civilization, but a scrapbook of modern images translated onto an ancient-looking canvas. The Ica stones stand today not as an archaeological mystery, but as one of the most instructive case studies in the critical importance of skepticism and methodology. They reveal how powerfully our wishes can shape what we think we see. The stones were a perfect mirror, reflecting back the popular fascinations of their era: dinosaurs, ancient astronauts, and lost technologies. They also highlight the crucial role of the scientific community as a corrective filter. While the public story raced ahead, archaeologists and geologists did the slow, unglamorous work of testing the claims. They published their findings on the tool marks, the lack of patina in the grooves, and the anachronistic imagery. This process is not about closing minds, but about opening them to a more rigorous standard of proof. The legacy of the Ica stones is a vital lesson in intellectual hygiene. They remind us that extraordinary claims do not just require extraordinary evidence. They require evidence that can withstand the ordinary, meticulous scrutiny of peer review, chemical testing, and contextual analysis. The real anomaly here is not a forgotten civilization, but the enduring human capacity to believe in a past we wish were true, even when the stones themselves quietly confess their very modern, very human origin. A city's end is rarely written in a single violent chapter. Among the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro, one of the great centers of the ancient Indus Valley civilization, archaeologists once believed they had found evidence of a final, terrible day. Scattered in the streets and buildings were human remains, a scene that for decades was interpreted as the smoking gun of a catastrophic invasion, a sudden massacre that wiped out a sophisticated urban culture around 1,900 years before the Common Era. This narrative was clean, dramatic, and fit the historical models of the time where civilizations often fell to the sword. Yet, as is so often the case, the closer science looked, the more that simple story began to dissolve into a far more complex and sobering truth. The skeletons, while poignant, showed no signs of mass violence, no weapon wounds or evidence of a concentrated attack. Instead, they appeared to be isolated finds, individuals who had passed in a city that was already in its twilight. The theory of a warlike conquest, once a cornerstone of the explanation, has been quietly set aside by the weight of new evidence. The real culprit was not an army, but a changing sky. Geological cores drilled from the region, along with studies of ancient riverbeds, tell a story of profound environmental transformation. The lifeblood of the Indus civilization was its rivers, fed by reliable monsoon rains. But climate data reveals a prolonged period of weakening monsoons, a shift that caused the great rivers to shrink, change course, or dry up entirely. This was not a sudden disaster, but a slow, relentless squeeze. Crops would have failed with increasing frequency, trade routes along the waterways would have become unreliable, and the delicate balance that supported dense urban populations like Mohenjo-Daro began to fracture. The city did not burn, it simply emptied, its people gradually dispersing in search of water and arable land, returning to a more mobile, rural way of life. The latest science is adding startling intimacy to this broad climatic picture. Isotopic analysis of the teeth and bones from those very skeletons allows researchers to read the biographical details of their final years. By measuring the ratios of different forms of oxygen and carbon, scientists can reconstruct diet and migration. What they are finding suggests periods of nutritional stress and sudden shifts in food sources, clues that point to famine and disruption long before any final abandonment. This is not evidence of a massacre, but of a prolonged hardship, a society straining against environmental limits it could not control. The story of Mohenjo-Daro's decline is a masterclass in how archaeological understanding evolves. It demonstrates a fundamental shift from seeking a single, dramatic cause to untangling a web of interconnected pressures. The city's end was likely a compound fracture, a combination of climatic change, economic collapse, and the slow breakdown of the social contract that held such a complex urban center together. People did not flee an enemy at the gates. They made a series of difficult, individual decisions to leave a place that could no longer sustain them, until one day, the last family gathered their belongings, walked out of the great city, and did not look back. The silence they left behind was not the silence of a tomb, but the quiet of a place whose time had passed, a monument not to a violent end, but to the fragile pact between human civilization and the natural world that sustains it. These scattered fragments, from the star-tracking gears of a Greek shipwreck to the silent stone jaws of Laos, are not isolated curiosities. When we step back, patterns begin to emerge from the noise, revealing the shared heartbeat of these disparate puzzles. Across continents and millennia, a handful of profound human impulses repeat, each anomaly a different dialect in the same ancient language. We see an unshakable drive to build on a colossal scale, to reshape the very earth as a testament to belief or power. We witness a deep, precise conversation with the cosmos, where stone circles and desert lines became calendars and cathedrals under the open sky. The physical evidence constantly whispers of connections that defy our maps, a single Norse coin in Maine or a Caucasian mummy in China, tracing the ghostly outlines of trade and migration routes we are only beginning to chart. And perhaps most humbling, we repeatedly confront our own tendency to see a human hand in the breathtaking artistry of nature, from spherical concretions mistaken for tools to wind sculpted hills seen as pyramids. This collection of mysteries, therefore, is more than a list. It is a map of the scientific journey itself, a path that is rarely a straight line from question to answer. It is a road littered with compelling dead ends like the Ica stones, honest misinterpretations waiting for better technology, and the rare, dazzling breakthrough that reorients everything we thought we knew. What they collectively underscore is that history is not a finished book sitting on a shelf. It is a dynamic, half-assembled puzzle on a vast table. We have many of the edge pieces, the broad chronology of kings and empires, but the center of the picture remains frustratingly incomplete. Each of these 35 anomalies is a piece that refuses to fit the border we have constructed. It might be the wrong color, the wrong shape, or it might depict a scene from a story we have never heard. The instinct might be to force it, to sand down the edges until it conforms to the existing image. True understanding, however, begins when we stop forcing. It starts when we hold that odd piece up and allow it to question not just where it belongs, but whether the picture we are trying to complete is even the right one. These stubborn remnants from the past are not errors in the data. They are corrections. They are the quiet, persistent voice of the human story, reminding us that our ancestors were as clever, as complex, and as curious as we are, and that their world, in all its lost grandeur, is still waiting for us to listen. The tools we use to ask questions inevitably shape the answers we find. As we stand at this frontier of historical inquiry, the next wave of discovery is being built not just with shovels, but with algorithms and subatomic particles. Artificial intelligence is beginning to sift through mountains of data that would take a human researcher a lifetime to analyze, searching for subtle patterns in pottery designs, architectural layouts, or even the wear patterns on stone tools that might reveal a common cultural thread across continents. Imagine a system that can compare every known example of a Roman dodecahedron in seconds, identifying microscopic similarities in manufacture that suggest a single workshop, or cross-referencing glyphs from 100 different sites to propose a new phonetic value for an undeciphered symbol. This is not about machines replacing archaeologists, but about giving them a new kind of magnifying glass, one that can see connections hidden in plain sight by the sheer scale of the information. Simultaneously, our ability to trace the journey of a single artifact is approaching the precision of a biography. Isotopic sourcing is evolving into a global fingerprinting system. By analyzing the unique chemical signatures locked within a piece of obsidian, a copper ingot, or even the enamel of a tooth, scientists can now often pinpoint not just the region, but the specific mountain valley or ore deposit it came from. This transforms a lone artifact from a mystery into a data point on a map of ancient exchange, revealing trade networks of staggering complexity and distance that rewrite our understanding of economic and social interaction. We are moving from wondering where something was found to tracing the entire path it traveled during its use in the ancient world. Perhaps the most revolutionary tools are those that allow us to see without disturbing. Quantum sensing, a technology emerging from physics labs, promises to detect minute variations in magnetic fields or gravity, enabling researchers to map buried structures, voids, and even archaeological features like hearths or post holes from the surface with unprecedented clarity. This could allow us to virtually excavate an entire site before a single trowel touches the earth, preserving its context for future generations while still unlocking its secrets. The very ground beneath our feet is becoming a transparent window. This technological leap, however, is only half the equation. The true future of understanding these anomalies lies in a profound shift toward collaborative wisdom. Solving these puzzles increasingly demands a chorus of voices, not a solo performance. A geneticist might explain the migration patterns revealed by ancient DNA, while a climatologist reconstructs the drought that forced that migration. A materials scientist deciphers the alloy of a mysterious metal object, and an astronomer calculates the celestial event it was designed to predict. The archaeologist becomes the conductor, synthesizing these disparate data streams into a coherent story about human experience. This interdisciplinary approach acknowledges that the past was not divided into academic departments, and neither should our study of it be. Most importantly, there is a growing and essential recognition of other ways of knowing. For decades, many archaeological interpretations were crafted without consulting the living descendants of the cultures being studied. Now, a powerful movement is integrating indigenous knowledge and oral histories into the heart of research. A local elder's story about a landscape feature might explain the purpose of a geoglyph that satellite imagery could only map. A community's traditional practice could illuminate the ritual use of an object that sat baffling in a museum case. This is not about replacing science with story, but about weaving different threads of evidence into a stronger, more respectful, and more complete tapestry. It provides the cultural context that turns a curious artifact back into a meaningful part of a living heritage. The ultimate promise of this new era, therefore, is not merely a checklist of solved mysteries. It is the certainty that we will discover entirely new categories of questions we cannot yet even formulate. Every new tool, every new collaboration, every newly heard perspective opens a door not just to an answer, but to a deeper, richer layer of mystery. The past, it seems, is an infinite puzzle, one that grows more complex and more fascinating the more we learn, ensuring that our conversation with those who came before us will never truly end. The gears of the Antikythera mechanism and the silent giants of Easter Island are not isolated wonders, but points of light on a vast, uncharted map of human experience. Each of these 35 anomalies is a chapter in a story far grander than a simple timeline, a testament to the restless ingenuity and profound spirituality that have always defined our species. They are not footnotes to history, they are its central, beating heart, pushing against the walls of our understanding and demanding we look again. What we have explored together is a record of that beautiful, ongoing struggle, the moment when a confident narrative meets a piece of evidence that simply will not fit. This friction is not a failure of science, but its very engine. It is the spark that ignites new questions, that drives the invention of tools to see through stone and sequence genomes from dust, and that humbles us into remembering how much we have yet to learn. Some of these puzzles, like the celestial math of ancient observatories, are slowly yielding their logic to our persistent inquiry. Others, like the silent purpose of a Roman dodecahedron, guard their secrets with a stubborn elegance, reminding us that not every conversation with the past will be answered in our lifetime. This is not a conclusion, but an invitation. Let this journey be a starting point for your own curiosity. Look at the landscape around you with new eyes, wonder about the objects in a museum case, and question the stories we think are settled. For every mystery we have touched upon, 100 more lie buried in desert sands, locked in permafrost, or hidden in plain sight within a forgotten manuscript. They wait only for the right tool, the right question, the right curious mind to begin the process of bringing them back into the light. Which of these anomalies captured your imagination the most? Was it the intricate clockwork of an ancient computer, or the haunting, human scale of the Tarim mummies? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you are eager to continue this exploration of our deepest historical puzzles, subscribe to join us as we keep unraveling the greatest mysteries of our shared human story.